Hey everybody, we got another solid human being coming on the show, Mark Turner, former Recon Marine who has been helping the Ukrainians learn how to fight on the ground in Ukraine. Hey, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world these days that you can't control. One of the only things you can control is spending time with your family out here in the wilderness. It's really the only thing that matters. But anyways, I hope you guys like the show. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for all notifications. And love you guys. Right, bud? That's right.
All right. So when you're in the Ukraine and you're in a church, cathedral steeple, trying to look at sniper positions, we're not going to war. We're just helping here. And if the war comes here, that's fine, but the war's not here.
So some of them still just don't get it. It's like they're in your country and you still think
It's surreal,
it's
though.
not coming here.
It's surreal, though, isn't it? Imagine if in New York the Russians invaded. It's an unbelievable thing. I mean, think of 9/11 when that happened. You're sitting watching it, it's real, but it's unbelievable. Our instructions were basically find this guy or find the priest. It's not how we work. I told Zach right away, I said, look man, we would never run something like this. It's okay, we'll be all right. These two guys come out of the car, they're almost tripping over their own feet, AKs drawn on us.
Hey guys, let me tell you about this subscription service that I've been working real hard on called Vigilance Elite Patreon. Basically on Patreon, we have it broken up into 3 different tiers. We got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Let's dive in. Our tier 1 patrons get all the behind the scenes footage of the Shawn Ryan show. That could include behind the scenes photos, that could be side conversations that we have in between breaks, that could be specific questions that our patrons give us for the guest on the Shawn Ryan show, and a ton of bonus content that doesn't really fit into any specific category. For our tier 2 patrons, they get access to our tactical training library, which consists of well over 100 videos. We've broken those videos up into separate categories, and those categories are rifle fundamentals, pistol fundamentals, drills, tactics, driving, gear and weapon setups, and everybody's favorite, mindset. Also on tier 2, you will get a live update from me on the 1st and the 15th of every month where we talk about the upcoming guests on the Shawn Ryan show, plus all the benefits of tier 1. Our top tier, which is tier 3, gets full access to all the other tiers, plus they get full access to me where we do video teleconferencing, VTC, once a month. We discuss anything from tactics to current events to who's coming on the show. I take suggestions, and it's very interactive. No matter what tier you choose, the support is greatly appreciated, and it is the only thing that makes this show drive on. So thank you for all the support. See you on Patreon. Mark Turner, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Man, you are like my favorite type of guest to interview on here. You're really quiet. Not a whole lot of people know who you are or what you've been up to. And we got a message on Shawn Ryan Show Instagram account saying that you had been in Ukraine since the war started, went on 18 hours notice, and you were coming back to kind of recruit some guys to go back over with you. And so I cleared my schedule. I wanted to get you here as fast as possible. So here we are 6 days later, and you're in the studio. I'm really excited for this interview.
No, thanks for helping us get the word out. And trying to do a lot there, and you know, you've been great with your time and your effort to help us get the word out. So thanks.
Well, you're welcome. It's going to be a real pleasure interviewing you. So I just want to knock out some of the business stuff right up front. So the reason you're coming here is you're not looking for any credit or anything like that. You came here because you are training Ukrainians in basically war fighting. And so you came back to hopefully recruit special operations types to go back over with you and train these guys. And you're also looking for equipment. So any of these tactical gear companies, flashlights, magazines, whatever they've got that they can donate to you guys for your mission over there, you're welcoming. So before we start, where can everybody find you?
My Instagram, Mark Turner BJJ. My personal email is good as well. I know might end up regret putting that out there, but Mark Turner BJJ at Gmail, and then the Overwatch Foundation is our non-profit. That's the Overwatch Foundation on Instagram as well, and all the links will be on there for the website and all that kind of stuff as well.
Perfect. I'll link everything below. So if you are looking to get over there and help Mark train some of the Ukrainians and get these guys spun up for the Russian threat that they're dealing with, there's your guy. He has all the logistics figured out. And you're also going on Mike Ritland's podcast, who gives a phenomenal interview. I don't know when that's airing, but I'm going to link his podcast below to drive traffic, because there's no doubt in my mind, whatever I don't cover, Mike will definitely pick up the ball. So great interviewer. Mike's just a solid dude. But so how I want to kind of go through this interview is, nobody really knows what's going on other than mainstream media. And as time goes on, more and more people are realizing mainstream media is not putting facts out. There's an agenda behind it, and a lot of people aren't watching it anymore. And so I haven't given any opinions, anything on Ukraine-Russia conflict, because I don't trust anything that the mainstream's putting out. In fact, they've already been caught in lies. One of them was the fighter pilot that wound up being a video game fantasy that they put out there as fact. And then there was another one too. I can't remember what it was, but which you're unaware of because you said you don't even know what's going on mainstream. So I want to get your perspective of what's actually going on the ground over there, what some of these guys are saying, what you're seeing on the ground. I know you talked to some high-ranking diplomats and government officials that are giving you intelligence about what's happening over there. And so I want to kind of intertwine that with what you're actually doing over there. And then at the end, we'll talk about what you're doing with your nonprofit.
Okay.
But always give everybody a gift.
Oh, man. Do I open it now or what?
Go ahead, open it up.
Goodness gracious. Look, I'm a Marine. You're giving me a box to open here. This is tricky.
You can rip it. Don't be bashful.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know if I should show these. These are like worth more than gold at the moment, aren't they?
We just got those back in stock.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is the first of the new batch?
That's the first of the new batch.
Wow. Fantastic.
I don't know if they'll be on the website yet, but they're back.
There's how many bags here? 4 bags? These are not going to make it to the airport.
We'll give you some more.
These won't make it back home. I'm going to destroy these. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's dive right into it.
Okay.
So just day one, where were you when you got this call?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on me. I was in the Marine Corps 10 years, started in the infantry, finished off in the reconnaissance community. Been out longer than I was in at this point. You know, combat veteran, all that good stuff. I have a jiu-jitsu academy now in the Chicago area, and we have a huge kind of veteran community in the academy. Some special operations guys, some veterans, a lot of police first responders, that kind of stuff. So we have a good community there of guys. One of the guys in the academy is a Ukrainian guy. No military experience or anything. Actually, brand new American. His name's Yuri. I'll talk about Yuri quite a bit. Brand new American, naturalized citizen. I'm a naturalized citizen as well. I'm from Scotland, obviously, and we're good friends. And leading up to the war, obviously there was a lot of stuff on TV, and chatting back and forth, checking in with a friend, how's everything going back home, and kind of going back and forth. When the war kicked off, he obviously completely changed, right? Yeah. I mean, it's real now. I mean, it was real before, but now there's Russians in his country, kind of thing. So, and I could see it was affecting him. And I said, it was at the weekend, I said, look, let's go to the range, let's shoot a little bit. He's kind of getting into his rights as an American, got his concealed carry, he's learning how to shoot, this kind of stuff. So I said, we'll go to the range, a couple of hours, it will get your mind off the TV and out of your phone, right? Just clear your head a little bit. So we're doing our thing at the range as you do, and he's like, I think I'm just going to go home and check on my family. And I said, well, Yuri, you can't go back there right now, I mean, obviously a lot of uncertainty, it's war, you don't have any experience. He's like, I really want to go back. I said, well, let me see if I can get some guys together, and we'll do, we have this non-profit, we do a lot of disaster relief, like kind of fast action type stuff with hurricanes, these kind of things. I said, let me see if I can get some guys together and we'll do some kind of humanitarian thing there, and we'll go with you, make sure everything's okay. Not to protect them really, but kind of, right, to go with them. And he's like, he was kind of blown away by that. And I mean, we move fast. Part of why we're so good at what we do is because we're quick to act when these things happen, right? So 18 hours later, we were pretty much on the way to Ukraine. From that conversation to getting on the bird, I mean, it was that fast.
And you're married with 2 kids?
Yeah, 3 kids, one's 18.
3 kids.
But 2 little ones, 4-year-old and 3-month-old.
And you're over there with 18 hours notice.
Yeah.
How long was this going on? How long had the war started before you guys got in country?
I think 3 days.
Where did you fly into?
A neighbouring country, we'll say. I don't really want to say because of kind of what we're doing there and what we're doing in that neighbouring country as well. But neighbouring country, drove to the border. So it was, all in all, with all the travel and the connections, it was close to 17, 18 hours.
Oh, wow.
Airport, plane, and then 7 hours drive, which ended up being 9 hours drive because we made a few stops and gathered humanitarian supplies on the way. So a 9-hour drive to the border.
Throughout the interview, if there's anything that I understand, there's a lot of sensitive material that you don't want to reveal. So just say, as much as you can, and if you can't go any farther, then just say.
No, I mean, look, I'm here to be as open and transparent as possible. There is obviously, for OPSEC stuff, names and some places I won't say just because we're still actively doing things there. And we are planning on going back, and obviously you have a massive audience, so but I'll be as transparent with as much as I can.
What type of equipment did you take with you?
We went pretty slick, right? We didn't take any weapons with us. We had connections to that kind of stuff in country if and when we needed it. We didn't even check any bags. It was, didn't check any bags, partly because, I mean, look, we had a lot going on. We're doing stuff kind of quick, hard and fast. And I mean, imagine getting stuck trying to do something like that because an airline lost your bag, right? Yeah. So, as much as you could pack into a carry-on bag is what we had. We also knew when we stopped and got a bunch of supplies in the neighbouring country, we carried all that stuff across the border. We walked across the border.
You walked across the border?
With stuff in hand, yeah.
Was anybody there to receive you?
Yeah, so what happened when we arrived in the neighbouring country, we started building our network there before we even left. People always say, how can you do that stuff so fast? And I say, well, we had 19 hours of kind of airport flight time to prepare stuff and to coordinate. And then we had that drive. So like you can get a lot done. If we would have taken all that time and planned it here stateside, you're missing a day or 2 days, right? So it's kind of punch out and go and work the plan as you're going. So we had that network to get us from the airport in the neighbouring country to the border. And it was very funny because Yuri obviously speaks Ukrainian, but we didn't have anybody that spoke the language in this neighbouring country. And we tried to set it up to where the guy who would come and pick us up, it was kind of like a bad game of telephone, right? I'm coordinating with you, but you're coordinating with the guy who's going to come meet us. So we're planning it and we say, look, we have this long drive. We're arriving kind of in the late afternoon, early evening, and now we have to do that drive to the border. It would be fantastic if this guy could fill the car up with as much medical supply, because that's what we were doing. We took basically medical supplies that you would put in an IFAC, like combat trauma type stuff. Stuff for packing wounds, tourniquets. We ended up not being able to get tourniquets in country. I brought a bunch of tourniquets and then we sourced a bunch more. But that kind of stuff, compression bandages, gauze, the same kind of stuff that you'd imagine is in an IFAC. Said, give the guy a list. It'd be good if he had the car packed full of that stuff, so we just get in the car and we can go to the border. So he comes up, and the guy is so funny. We called him Rambo because he showed up. He had like the olive drab gear on and the hat, like standing there at the airport. It's like that's our guy for sure. Like he stuck out. He thought he's James Bond or something, right?
Yeah.
Coming to pick these guys up. So he shows us, he's all excited to show us what he has in the trunk, and it's like everything we had on the list, he got like one of. So it's like, oh man, heart of gold, fantastic, thank you. We need more. Like, we need this car bursting with stuff. So we proceeded to stop at every pharmacy that we could find, and it's 2 American Marines and Yuri go into these pharmacies and we're like, we just need to gut your pharmacy of all the stuff. And imagine you're in a Eastern European country, 1-2 people working in these pharmacies, and we come rolling in and just gut the whole store. They're thinking like, what in the world is going on here? Once they kind of caught on to what we were doing, they were incredibly helpful and just started giving us more than we were even asking for. So we did that 5 times. We basically kept stopping until it was time for pharmacies to close.
Okay.
And we filled up the car and, continued on to the border. Got there really late, ran into, we were about a mile or 2 away from the border and ran into federal police of that neighbouring country. Told them who we were, what we were doing. And they were like, look, the border's kind of dodgy at night and all this kind of stuff. You probably don't want to go right now. It's really late at night. I think it was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. You don't want to go right now, and we're not going to let you go right now. In the morning, you guys can go ahead and punch over. So we just kind of hung out on the side of the road, snowing, cold, middle of the night. There was all kinds of other cars there. You can imagine there's a lot of Ukrainian people trying to get out.
How many people did you estimate? Was the border flooded with people, like thousands?
Coming out, there was a lot of people. At the time we crossed, we were the only ones crossing in.
Yeah. There
There were some people on the outside, like I said, maybe a mile away, staged, kind of waiting for people to come out. But a border, you've had some experience with borders. Borders can be a dodgy place, you know. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the cantina from Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's just, you have all kinds of people there, and you don't really know. So yeah, we had kind of a watch and keeping an eye out and all that. We had to sit there for a couple of hours, kept checking with the police, hey, let us go now, and then Then they let us cross, yeah.
Did you know where you were going before you crossed the border?
Yeah, so we had some contacts on the other side, obviously because of Yuri. He actually, we couldn't have done what we did to the level that we did it without him, because it's kind of like the hometown guy bringing us there. A ton of doors opened. You know, like if you yourself was like, hey, I'm just going to go to Ukraine and try and save the world kind of thing, it would be difficult. It'd be really difficult. So we had some guys pick us up on the other side, and it's funny, like I said, we walked across the border, all that stuff that we packed the car with in hand, in boxes and in bags, and we're just walking, and we're crossing over, and there's this little shack, like a little guard shack, looks abandoned or whatever, and we start walking. Guy's like, hey, Ukrainian guy, we're like, what's this guy doing? Let me see your papers, all this kind of stuff. Middle of nowhere, checks our papers, and we're like, all right, now what? And it was so funny. He's like, all right, now you just go to Ukraine. All right, I guess we're here, right? So 2 guys come in a van to pick us up, and it was kind of like they pull up, the van door opens, get in kind of deal. We don't know these guys. Yuri knows of these guys. Turns out one of the guys, his name's Sasha, just an incredible human, right, and patriot for his country. He has this kind of underground network of, it's kind of like a humanitarian group. They do a lot of humanitarian stuff for people, for the army, getting stuff out to the front, and helping with refugees, kind of getting them to that area and helping them get to the borders, people that are leaving some of the areas where the fronts are. So he came, picked us up, and you know, you get into the van with these guys. I don't speak Ukrainian. Just kind of like, all right, let's go. We're doing this. You know, I didn't know how influential and how incredible he was at that time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, having a contact like that was great. From there, we went to the area, kind of like our AO that we were operating out of, into his. And I can mention the place now because they've since moved in the last few days to a different location. But it was a window and door sales place, like patio doors and windows, and they basically just turned it into this incredible network, like underground network, to support the war effort. And you know, we get to the town, we went there, we went to our safe house, kind of got settled in, and you know, started working the plan from there.
Wow. What kind of, did you see kind of who was leaving the border? Was it a lot of women and children? Was there a lot of fighting age males leaving?
Yeah, there's not a lot of fighting age males. It was mainly women and children. The males there are required to stay. I think there are some exceptions. I think it's from 18 or 16 to 60 is the age that has to remain in country. They all are joining the army right now. Many are just doing it. You know, they don't have to be told. They want to do it. The same way, if something happened here, you and I wouldn't just sit by, right? I mean, their patriotism is incredible. But yeah, that on one side, to me, that's pretty incredible, heroic and patriotic. But the families are being split, right? Yeah. Because the women and children are getting out, and even the women and children that are staying in some of the areas where the front is not, like where the actual fighting's not, they're still set. Their family's still broken because the men are all going to the front.
How are they? Are they being put in camps? Where are they staying? Where
the
are
refugees?
They going? Yeah, the refugees.
Some of them are moving. So let's say that the fronts are more kind of out east, let's say. So as they move west, some of them are going to towns that are not affected heavily by the fighting yet, or that aren't as bad of a threat as where they're coming from. Some of them that are actually going to the borders, and this is kind of the problem they're having now, and what I've heard about how we're looking at it as Americans, is let's bring them to America, let's bring them to other parts of Europe and help them. That's a fantastic idea, but these people don't want that. They want to stay close to the border so that when this clears up, they go back to their life, right? I mean, I'm sure some of them would love to come here, but many of them, again, their husbands, their fathers, their brothers are at the front.
Yeah.
So they don't want to come to Tennessee
Yeah,
or Chicago right
that
now.
makes sense.
They want to be close to home. So it puts a lot of stress on those border areas of those neighboring countries, because it's not just processing them and moving them on. They don't
Yeah.
want that. So you have to, in my opinion, you have to kind of help facilitate that, but it puts a lot of pressure on those border areas.
Yeah. So they want to be as close as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would too, right?
Yeah.
You know, but we don't think like that really. We think of it as, hey, let's get them out of there and start them over.
Yeah.
You know, give them a new life kind of thing, and that's not really what many of them are interested in.
Interesting. That's interesting. I'm glad we just went into that. So you're at the underground facility, and so what starts to develop there? Who are you meeting?
Yeah, it was, so to set the scene of that, like I said, it's this kind of underground war effort thing. Kind of reminds you of like a World War II movie when you see that kind of stuff going on. The whole town is involved, right? You have women and children making cami netting in the gymnasiums. You have everybody helping out. Anybody that has any kind of, you know, there was a steel guy there talking to us about making plates, and seamstresses helping out with this, that, or the next thing. Doctors, nurses, everybody's helping out. And we go in there and just start, okay, how can we help? We do our med drop with the supplies. We're explaining to them, like, look, explaining to them about like an IFAC kit. Here's what you need in there. Here's a box of stuff. You need to make these kits up. Here's what goes into that. And we just start making connections, looking for stuff to do, looking for ways we can help. And somebody mentions about the military. There's a military base in town. And what happened was when the war kicked off, they had about 200,000 people join the armed forces in a weekend.
Wow.
So you can imagine the strain. I mean, if 200,000 people enlisted in our military on a weekend, we'd struggle to process all that, right? So they had a lot of guys who had no experience, no training, anything like that, no uniforms, no gear. And we had heard the military had some strain. They set up these territorial defense units. I think most of the people listening to this will have heard of like the Foreign Legion thing that Ukraine started, right? Where anybody can come over and we'll arm them and all this kind of stuff. We weren't in contact with any of that. But these territorial defense units originally were set up to protect local areas. So like your town would have a territorial defense unit made up of people from that town, and they would protect the area. Turns out with everything going on, these territorial defense units are also getting sent to the front. No training, no
Wow.
gear. Some of them haven't even touched a rifle till they get there.
How far in are you into Ukraine?
From the border,
Yeah.
we'll say a couple hours, let's say.
Can you name the town?
No.
Okay.
No, just because there's so, and the reason why is what Russia's doing right now to these western areas. They know they're getting a lot of help from the western areas of Ukraine. They know they're getting help from the neighboring countries. So they're sending saboteurs out to those areas to mark targets, right? I mean, there's already been some issues where some of the areas in the west, there was that location kind of close to the Polish border that just got bombed.
Yeah.
Because they found out they were training these kind of units there, and you know, so I don't want to say the area for those kind of reasons, for those people's protection, and then for mine as well, because I'm probably going back there, and if they know that Americans are there, obviously that's bad as well. So we found out this army base and basically just went, knocked on the door and told the guard, like, hey, here's who we are, who's in charge, get us in front of somebody who's in charge. So we end up in front of this colonel, and you know, he was a tank commander. Now he's dealing with all these infantry type guys. The major that was working under him was in the army a long time ago. When he was done in the army, he was a salesman for like aquatic type stuff, like aquariums, fish and aquariums.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, ominous dominus, you're a major in the army now, right? Running these guys, and he was an artillery guy. So we go in and we told the colonel, we said, look, we're going to be here for the next X amount of days. Here's who we are. If you need any help, let us know. We were not going there to train Ukrainians. We weren't going there to fight. You know, we were going there to take Yuri home. And this is kind of part of how everything spiraled, and we, you know, got more involved and more involved. He was very kind of skeptical of us at first. I mean, I don't think he thought we were up to anything. Like, he didn't think we were Russian saboteurs or anything. But he just kind of was, who are you and why are you doing this, you know? And he said, I'll tell you what, we're doing defensive positions around the town and around the base. Kind of, we know what we're doing, but we'd like some advice on what we've done. And if you have any advice on improvements we could make, let's talk about it. So he starts showing us around the base. We like this, we would add that, we'd get rid of this, kind of giving him our opinion on it, like a site survey. And he says, after that, he's like, okay. So he starts showing us surrounding buildings in the area that they have kind of taken over and set up defensive positions in. And I was kind of impressed with that, because you couldn't tell. I mean, I hadn't been in the town that long, but you couldn't tell they were doing this stuff in these adjacent buildings and other buildings. And then some other places, like with the video we had with the clock tower and that kind of stuff.
Is this the one where you're setting up a sniper hut?
Yeah, and like a you know, OP kind of thing for them.
So when you're in the Ukraine and you're in a church cathedral steeple trying to look at sniper positions, and there's pigeon shite everywhere, this is part of the deal. At the top of this tower, it's a pain just getting up here. Alright, I'll be back. So we're on top of the observation post, sniper position for the Ukrainian army in this town, and they're getting set up for a potential attack. So we're helping them scout some positions, and hey Zach, come over here and take a look at some good vantage points for them.
And you know, we're looking at that stuff, giving him a good site survey, helping him out, changing some stuff. And he's like, okay, kind of building trust with him then. And again, in the beginning, he was very short with us, wasn't being rude, wasn't being dismissive, but you could tell he didn't really know. And then by the end of doing all that site survey, he's like, okay, I think these guys can help. He goes, would you guys be interested in training the men? Yeah, right, we'll help you. Start asking him about experience, this kind of thing. And he kind of was like almost embarrassed and being like, look, no experience, they don't know what they're doing. We don't really know how to train them. It's not our thing, but we have these guys, and if you can help. So, okay, come back tomorrow and we'll start training the men, right? So he connected us with the major, and then that was that. So we did a lot of our training in the mornings.
How well equipped are they? What are they?
They're not. I mean, we went there on the first day, and it was like a movie, right? We show up, 2 hard charging Marines ready to train these guys, and you had fathers and sons, you had old men, you had people who never would have joined the military, never would have set up to fight. I mean, they're there with Adidas tracksuits on and gym shoes, and it's 3 inches of snow and 25 degrees.
Wow.
And, you know, because they just didn't have enough uniforms. And our thing was like, okay, what these guys are doing is pretty incredible. Like I said, you and I would do it, but it's still incredible. It's incredible that you have to do that.
Yeah.
Join the military because people are invading your country. So, but then imagine you do that, you know, you served. Imagine You served, and you don't even have a uniform. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, I'm a Marine. Uniforms are important to us, right? I mean, our uniform's special to us. It helps make you be who you are as a warfighter, you know. And they didn't have that. Some of them, they didn't have weapons. They don't have deuce gear. They don't have chest rigs. They don't have armor. They don't have IFAKs. They don't have boots. They have nothing. Some of them didn't have rifles. We had guys that were using icicles during training. Icicles.
For mock rifles?
Yes.
Wow.
Sticks. A guy used a water bottle. Could you imagine doing a workup to go on deployment using an icicle as your rifle?
No. I mean, no, I can't.
And so you're standing in front of 35 guys on that first day, and the only thing they have is a piece of yellow ribbon tied around their arm to show that they're Ukrainians when they're
That's
out
how
and
they're
about.
identifying each
Yeah,
other?
and the Russians are wearing red. Red, because some of them don't have uniforms either. So they're wearing a red piece of ribbon. The Ukrainians are wearing, it's like paintball in the backyard.
The Russians don't have uniforms?
Some of them know because they've had a lot of conscripts. It's not all Russian army. They have a lot of conscripts that they're using from some of the southern and eastern regions of Ukraine that the Russians have basically been there since 2014. And they're bringing people in from all over. Syria, you know.
They're bringing people in from Syria?
Yeah, there's Chechens there. There's Chechens on both sides as well. So one of the ways they're identifying...
Chechens are probably the most nasty warfighters known to man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we dealt with some of them in Iraq, obviously, as well, right? I mean, wherever something's going on, those guys pop up. But very interesting for me to learn that they're actually on both sides. There's Chechens fighting for Ukraine and fighting for Russia as well. But yeah, that's what they're running around with, ribbon on their arm and no gear, you know. And it's cold, and we're gonna be out here training, and we were pretty tough on them.
How many, what is like the man to gun ratio? How many men are there? How many guns are available for this particular scenario?
So we ended up training two different units. One was a little more equipped than the other, because one was fed from the actual army. The other one was this straight territorial defense that was spun up in a couple of days. I'd say, let's say you have a platoon size 30 people, you'd have 10, 12 of them with no rifles.
10 to 12 with no rifles.
You'd have the odd like PK sprinkled in, you know, but no kind of squad set up, no team set up.
Where did they get the guns?
They're getting whatever they can. They're getting them through kind of logistics, supply type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was using like personal weapons or anything. It was, it's all whatever they could scratch up from the military, right? And you know,
They're just scrounging, trying to protect
Yeah.
themselves. This is why the Second Amendment's so important.
Yeah, no, I mean it's incredible. And the first day they're all running around. These guys have no training. They're running around, magazine in, condition 1 with an AK. We're
Yeah.
like, clear and safe, right fucking now. Right? Like, I'll help you, but I'm not taking around here because some
Yeah.
guy doesn't know what he's doing. So, yeah, even weapons safety, weapons handling. It's kind of like, here, Shawn, here's a rifle.
Yeah.
You know,
Day 1, week 1.
you're hoping they're...
Where's the trigger?
Hoping they can point it in the right direction, you
Yeah.
know? So it was a lot of that. And, you know, we were tough on them just because of the kind of gravity of the situation, right? And it was kind of long training sessions, putting them through their paces on stuff, basic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fire and maneuver type stuff, basics of patrolling, hand and arm signals, weapons handling, you know, weapons manipulation, that kind of stuff. Very basic, like to say you or I. But it was difficult for them, obviously. And, you know, they're not in the greatest of shape. A few days ago, they were whatever they were in life. Now, all of a sudden, you know, and we kind of good cop, bad copped it. You know, the same way you experienced it at your selection processes, we experienced at our selection processes. You're not really mad at them. You're motivating them, you're pushing. The same thing that we've seen. And we just kind of naturally good cop, bad cop it, and I can get pretty fiery and emotional. And so Zach was kind of playing the good cop. But it was serious, and we had to, if we saw they were losing focus or we saw that they were getting tired, it's like, hey, there's no Russians in my country, right? They're here, and they're not next door, they're here. Take this shit serious, and let's get to work, right? Because this is going to happen. You're going to go to the front. And I always thought, like, I remember 18 years old, you're at boot camp, and this was before 9/11. Nothing really going on in the world, right? And I remember the drill instructors like, hey, you guys are going down range. And in boot camp, you have obviously your infantry, your combat MOS is in there with like supply, in there with guys who are, handing out towels at the rec center for the next 4 years, whatever. And you're like, come on, the guy, we're not going to war kind of thing. There's no war, right? Yeah. Then 9/11 happens, everybody goes. So for them, it's that they may be thinking, look, we're territorial defense. We're not going to war. We're just helping here. And if the war comes here, that's fine, but the war's not here. We had to set that expectation for them, and I'm glad we did, because now those units are at the front.
Wow. So some of them still just don't get it. It's like they're in your country, and you still think
it's surreal.
It's not coming here.
It's surreal though, isn't it? I mean, imagine right now we're sitting here. Imagine if in New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, the Russians invaded.
Yeah.
But we're here, right? It's an unbelievable thing. I mean, think of 9/11 when that happened. You're sitting watching it. It's real, but it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I think, and it was so early, I don't really think it had really hit them yet. They had done this incredibly patriotic thing. They had signed up. And this was before these guys signed up before. Now everybody's kind of forced to sign up, right? But these guys signed up before that was even put in place. So they've done an incredible thing, but they just, the same way you or I, you wouldn't feel the full aspects and the full kind of gravity of that at that time. Yeah. So we're trying to paint that picture for them, and, like a funny story, when the air raid sirens would go off every night. And one time they went off during the day when we were training. And the guys were kind of freaked out. What should we do? Should we take cover? Should we, they're talking to the major, they're talking to kind of their platoon leadership and all this. And I lost my mind, right? I'm like, look, we're hearing sirens. We're not hearing any impacts. We're not stopping and going inside and going to a basement for a siren.
We have to give them a little bit of a chewing, give them the whole, if you don't hear any impacts, we don't really care. I mean, we care, but unless that stuff's landed near us, we're all right. But this is life in the Ukraine at the moment.
If a round lands there, we'll go inside. We're training, right? Rounds are going to be coming at you downrange. You're not going inside when that starts happening. So setting that expectation with them, because they're civilians, and getting them into that, kind of trying to pump them up. We never broke them down. We weren't thrashing them. We weren't, making life miserable for them like we've experienced. It wasn't about that. It was about lifting them up, getting them the right training so they could perform. Breaking them down is not they're already broken down. Their country's been invaded, right? So it was building them up and kind of enabling them to be able to fire and move in the right direction and, defend their country when they have to do it. So, I think we hit the ground running training those guys, but we definitely got better at it as the days went by. And, the two groups that we trained were very different. Funnily enough, the actual military unit that was fed from the military unit, it was a few days into the war, but they already were starting to get burnt out because their command, their leadership had them doing patrols, standing watch, training, and they were not living in the best of conditions at all. and they were pretty burnt out. So even talking to the leadership and saying like, hey, think of the threat level where we are right now. Yeah, they need to protect the base. They need to be patrolling properly, like sentry type patrols, and they need to be standing guard properly. But you can't be burning them out right now, because by the time you get to the front, you know,
Yeah.
they're going to be gassed out. The actual volunteers, we'll call them, they were more motivated, more inspired, more energetic than the regular army guys
Wow.
were, which was pretty interesting, because we had to train them differently because of that.
Yeah.
You know, we had to treat them differently because of that. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. I mean, the first day we went to the regular army base, and we met a captain there. We met the major there. He was pretty locked on, but and you could tell his head was spinning. He had a lot going on, and he actually cut a meeting short with us to go see a friend of his that had been shot on the front. And we were kind of thinking like, what do you mean you're leaving your men to go see your friend at the front?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it was a, you know, an 05 that just up and leaves the guys to go see his buddy, we wouldn't do that here, right? I mean, that's terrible. Your friend got shot. Hopefully he's okay. Everything good. But you don't leave your guys to go do that. But he did. I mean, it was just interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I hadn't seen before. And we worked with a captain there, and the first few days we were there, you could tell that guy was just wrecked. So stressed out, so strung out. You know, the weight of the world's on the guy. And we just told him, look, man, your guys need you to be effective. You need to get your sleep. You need to, you know, get yourself, you need to be eating. And by the end, he kind of, you know, the good thing was they were very receptive to whatever we told them. And on the same with the defensive positions, we'd be in town the rest of the day working our humanitarian stuff and our contacts and our network and all this, and you'd see the guys filling sandbags, building, you know, bunkers and changing some stuff up and all this. It was, I mean, they took what we said seriously and right away got into action with the stuff. You know, when we left a group in the morning, we would tell the officer, here's how you need to train the guys the rest of the day. And basically gave them their training plan for the rest of the day. Here's what we want you to work on for tomorrow. And say, like, we'd have you demonstrate it, not let the rest of the guys do it, practice it. But you need to work on this for tomorrow. It's the first thing we're going to do when we come back. And we did that as a way to evaluate how well they were training. Because if we came back the next day and they looked like garbage, you'd know. If you showed somebody how to clear a room, and said, okay, practice this, I'll be back tomorrow. And you come back tomorrow, let me see it. And it was garbage, you know they didn't practice the day before.
Yeah.
So we put these kind of things in place just to, number one, help us see where the guys are at, and to make sure that they were training,
Yeah.
you know. And we're not getting paid to do this. We didn't go there to do this. You know, we just saw that need and tried to plug that hole.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm proud of those guys, because in the days that we were there, they got exponentially better, you know. And by the end, I told Zach, I said, look, if something kicked off in this town right now, I mean, they're not good. Don't get me wrong, right? They're not good. They're not like if it was you and I running and gunning. But I'd stand with them. The day one.
I mean, they got to be 100 times better than what they were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it was like day one. Oh, geez, right? But by the time, and I think you've seen some of the videos, the fire and movement stuff we had them doing, some of the IA drills and all that, you know, for contact. We had them breaking contact. We didn't get too crazy into any ambushes and all that kind of stuff. But as far as fire and movement goes, they were pretty locked on by the end of it, communicating. You know, it was impressive. They took it, both groups took it very seriously and got to a decent level. And you know, it's kind of emotional because when we left, it was like 2-3 days. I've only been back for like a week. 2-3 days after we got back, we got word that unit, the one unit, went to the front already.
Wow.
And so you're like, man, it's pretty heavy, right? Because I think if we weren't there,
The Army unit went to the front?
The Army unit went to the front, yeah. And if we weren't there and didn't train those guys, imagine how they would have been going to the front.
Yeah.
You know, at least now they had something.
How far were you guys from the front?
we'll say, I don't know, maybe 5 hour drive.
The 5 hour
Uh,
drive?
Well, to go way out east, yeah, I mean 4 or 5 hours.
Okay,
Now, I mean the some stuff's moving west.
obviously. And how long ago was that
How long ago were we
from
there?
today? Today is March
Today is the
18th.
18th. So we were there end of February through we got back the 9th
Okay.
of March. So, well, we got done with them 9th of March with those units. So yeah, a few days after that, we'd say beginning of this week, we got word that they were at the front.
Wow.
Still with no body armor, no helmets,
They're going to the front.
going to the front. Yeah, hopefully, God willing, they had some gear like that for them there. But these guys were running around with AK mags in their pockets. I
Yeah.
mean, could you even imagine training without gear, let alone, And one story that happened at the kind of the underground place was, he said, look, there's a team of seamstresses in town. They want to know how they can help. And my partner, he had done some R&D for some nylon companies since he's been out, designing different things, and he actually tested some of them with the Marine Corps, some products. So he's like, hey, let's see if we can get these seamstresses to make chest rigs. So we start designing this chest rig, showing it to the seamstress, and she's kind of looking like, never made anything like this before, but let's give it a crack, And she comes back the next day, and it kind of was a disaster, right? It was not up to scratch at all. It was a prototype, but it was terrible, right? Good effort, but no. So, and I remember in Iraq, when we were doing vehicle-borne stuff, I was often in the turret. And so I kind of went slick with gear when I was in the turret, right? My gear was all down inside the gun truck. So what I did have though was a bandolier, one of those old school
I knew you were
bandoliers,
going to say this.
slinging it over, right,
Yep.
with the 3 mags in there. So I said, maybe we just make a bandolier, And so we designed a bandolier, and she comes back the next day, and it was fantastic, right? They were worried about it like moving, obviously, so it was slung across, and it had a tie around the waist as well to secure it, so it's sitting on your side. Obviously stuff you could use in a vehicle as well, right? Like, remember, like training inside a vehicle. So we saw it, we loved it, and we have pictures, right? And you can show those. We took it to the colonel, and we walked in. He didn't know we were doing this. We told him, hey, what do you think of this? And this is a guy, again, weight of the world on his shoulders. He has all this stuff going on in his town. Imagine the stress of that guy, a colonel during wartime, right? And he just lit up like a Christmas tree. He was so happy. And so we went back and we told her, we said, look, make as many of these as you can. 25 people, and she just started bursting out crying. And she goes, and it's very emotional. She was like, I can't believe that I'm going to have such an effect on the war.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I mean, tears.
Yeah.
I'm crying about that because she just broke down, and something she made with her hands. These guys have nothing, but now they have that because of her and her team. And so they've made videos. I'll see if I can get you the video of them like actually sewing them. Sewing machines. It's not commercially produced, right? Sewing machines by hand, making these bandoliers. Velcro, I mean, fantastic. Nice kind of, same material like our camis are made of,
Okay.
Pretty heavy duty. They'll be fine. They'll be good, but those guys are using those at the front.
Wow.
So they went from AK mags in their pockets to at least now they have a piece of gear.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we need companies, When I was in the Marine Corps, there were a lot of, you had your Black Hawk, you had some of these aftermarket type nylon companies that make incredible gear. Nowadays, my goodness, it's I look at some of the gear, or somebody tells me about some of the gear that's out there now, I'm like, man, that's fantastic, right? Makes you want to go enlist again, just to use some of that, gear, right? And I know many of these companies are started by veterans who have used or needed this gear. And everyone talks about, hey, we're doing this for the end user. We're doing this for the end user. Well, you know what? These guys are the end user.
Yeah.
And they need that. They need that stuff. And look, I get it. It's a business. I get it. The pandemic's happened. It's tough. I'll try and I'll raise money and buy it at cost or whatever. But if any of these companies can donate, it's going to the end user, like the real end user, who has nothing else. It's not like, hey, I have the stuff that supply issued me and I just want better kit. It's not that. It's these guys have nothing.
Yeah.
So, and there are some guys that have already contacted us, like the guys at GBRS are putting something together to try and help with some gear. And, those guys are incredible, and that's going to be great if that pans out. But they need more.
You need big companies.
Yeah, we need companies. And like I said, we'll figure something out. I'm not saying give everything away. If you can do that, that's amazing. But I understand it's business, right? We'll try and make it happen. We have connections to diplomats in that country, and some high-ranking officers that they know it's a desperate need.
Yeah.
If we can get these companies money, we will. If they can donate, that would be incredible as well. But
this is anything too.
Anything.
This is plate carriers. This is camis, helmets, flashlights.
They don't have uniforms.
IFACs, boots, socks, all this kind of stuff.
We have the pattern for the camouflage uniforms that they have. I think it's MM14 is the pattern, I think. So if anyone can mass produce tops and bottoms in that pattern, that would be fantastic as well. They don't have uniforms. And like I said, something as small as a uniform makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it boosts the confidence.
Exactly. And same with any kind of gear. Anything. If you're a company there now,
Gloves,
everything that you have stuff that you're not going to move. Hey, this product just didn't sell. Nobody. Hey, maybe this is a product, something new came out. This is the older version. These guys will take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
So, I'm interjecting here with a plug, but get a hold of me if you're one of these people.
Yeah.
And you can really make a difference to these guys, because it's pretty incredible what they're doing with what they have as well.
Well, plug whatever you want. That's why you're here, and that's why we're doing this show.
Yeah.
So, on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the diplomats that you were talking to, and I want to talk about some of the intelligence that you gathered while you're over there and what's actually happening on the ground in the front.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, Mark, so we're back from the break. We're going to talk about, you talked to a number of high-level diplomats. You're talking about the Ministry of Defense, correct?
Yeah.
So let's go into some of that, and let's go into some of the intel that you're getting about what's actually going on the front.
Yeah, so we how we got connected with these people was we built quite an extensive network, had a lot of good connections to a lot that was going on in country. We kind of happened to fall into it. We we did some work to cultivate that a bit, but we just kind of met the right people at the right time, and it opened up a lot of doors. And when you're doing something like that, you take advantage of those opportunities. So when we spoke to the diplomats was we were leaving on our way home, had crossed the border and was driving through the neighboring country to get back to the airport to head home, and we get 7-hour drive, a couple hours in, we get a phone call. We want you to meet at the embassy in this country, the Ukrainian embassy in this neighboring country. Okay, right? I mean, let's go, right? Zach said, hey, they want us to go there. I'm like, all right, might as well add this as well to what we've been doing, you know. So we go there, we met up with the contact that we had, and then we start sitting down with these diplomats. The first was, we'll say she was involved in, we'll say like civil affairs type stuff. Very concerned about refugees. She was dealing a lot with that, and our point of speaking to her was the logistical chain. Obviously, I'm sure many people are familiar with, hey, sending stuff to Ukraine, send, donate, all this kind of stuff. It's coming from neighboring countries, all the neighboring countries. You can't send anything directly to Ukraine right now for obvious reasons. There's massive logistical issues getting any kind of supplies in because of kind of bills of lading and manifests and just how all that international
Red
shipping,
tape.
yeah, all that stuff. So we were kind of telling her, she was asked, she wanted to know from us what we saw on the ground and what people need so that she can better maneuver in those channels, like by law, right, and by regulation. And it's very messy. It's very difficult. We were in contact with a lot of people, other NGOs, and just a lot of people who were really motivated to try and get supplies in country. And that could be anything from, you know, bullets and band-aids type stuff, gear for the guys, down to diapers for kids in war, right? And it's just very muddy on getting that stuff. So these organizations in America and around the world are very motivated to do it. And I'm not saying if you send a box of stuff, if you do a fundraiser in your local community for Ukraine and you get boxes of stuff and you send it to one of these neighboring countries, I'm not saying it sits in a warehouse somewhere, but it might sit in a warehouse somewhere. You know, I mean, and that's tough because it's tough for me to think about that because like I've been there in Ukraine and I see the need for this stuff. And I obviously know, especially Americans, how big our hearts are and how motivated we can be and how actionable we can be when people are in need. And, you know, that warm and fuzzy, like, hey, we donated, there's a sticky side to that on the other end. And so we wanted to meet with her, or we were lucky enough to meet with her, to try and clear some of that stuff up. And it was very circle talky because, you know, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we make this happen? Can we have that happen? And God bless her, she's trying her best, but there's just a lot of roadblocks for that kind of stuff. We have a network where we can get stuff to a specific border, and we can have our guys pick it up at that border. So it'd be like you handing it to me.
Okay.
It's not done through any red. I mean, and you say, yeah, but that's going to be much smaller in scope, but it's not. We can do this with big 18-wheeler trucks. We can do this with. We have a network for this. Right now, they are in the process of taking some airports that are close to the borders in these neighboring countries, shutting them down to commercial travel and to things like that, and using it simply for humanitarian type action, which I think will help because some of that transportation stuff is where the red tape is, going from, plane to truck to border, crossing over, and how all that goes. I'm not a big logistical person, but I'm obviously living some of this out now and see the red tape. To me, it's like, let's just do it. You know what I mean? It's frustrating. So they're trying. Hopefully, some of that's been cleared up since we had the meeting with her. But these are some of the problems that they are having. Our solution is to use our network, right? And kind of do it the old-fashioned way. Getting the elbows and knees dirty and getting it done that way, because some of the other ways are more challenging.
Yeah.
We're still working on those other ways because, and they are getting supplies in there. I mean, I'm not saying they're not. It's just that a lot of it is very sticky and it's ever changing. So, but our network works. And, you know, we're trying to lean on that as heavy as possible. One, because it does work, and two, because hopefully if we can continue doing what we're doing, getting stuff in there, like we just got hundreds of tourniquets in our way, which we tried to get the tourniquets in another way, and it was just a nightmare. We're hoping through kind of validating it that it becomes an example, right? And that somebody sees it, someone else sees it, someone else sees it, and you know, I'm not saying it's the best way, but it works. And the guys that we have on the Ukrainian end, these two guys, Max and Sasha, I mentioned Sasha earlier, they're incredible with what they do. And they were just two regular guys, patriots for their country, that are literally moving stuff from all over Europe, from the US, from places like Holland, from Italy, from neighboring countries, these kind of places, and they're getting it to their little area, to their little shack, you know, their little kind of underground shack. It's not a shack, you get what I'm saying, and supply shack, and moving it to the front. There's networks of priests that they use that are moving back and forth, secret priests that are moving stuff back and forth, and this goes.
So you've set up rat lines.
It's unreal, and here's why it works that way is, you know, you and I were in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, where the war is pretty 360. It's all around you. This is very old school. This is there's the front line, and then there's all the lines behind the front, and it's moving things back and forth to the front. And it's like stuff you read in history books,
yeah.
You know, with World War II type stuff. It's that kind of warfare.
It's very conventional.
Yes. So setting up these kind of lines it's very important, and I'm sure the military's doing it, obviously, right? I'm sure there's government types that are doing it, but these civilians over there are doing it. And, you know, a motivated citizen can be pretty strong. I mean, you know, military government, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of, well, we can't do this just because we can't do it. These civilians, they're not putting up with any of that. They're getting stuff done every single day, and it's very impressive. Like I said, we walked into that establishment that they had, and it was day 3 or 4 of the war when we walked in there. You know, you could swear they were doing that for a year. Everything was so well oiled. People moving left, right, center. This stuff's coming in. This stuff's going out. This stuff's being organized and distributed. These people are moving through. Like, we were helping a lot with moving people, refugees, people that are escaping the front. We did a little processing thing there. We'd interview as many of them as we could to gather intel on what's going on at the front, what's going on in those towns, what do the people need. And those interviews are tough, right? Because, and I think, you know, I have some of those, I've shared them with you, that they're tough because that person, let's say one example, there was a man that left an area under heavy combat with his wife and daughter. She's 13, 14, the daughter. And he's pretty shaken up, right? And you're sitting there and you're poking him for information. And, you know, he's not involved in this. He's not in the military. He's not a government guy. He's just a guy. But he's an intel source. And if it's me talking to him, I'll poke, I'll stick the finger in that hole, right? But there's one interview specifically that we have on video where Zach's interviewing him. And I just remember sitting there and, you know, he's doing what a good Marine does, right? He's getting the intel from the guy. And I'm just sitting there like, shut up, man. Leave the guy alone. Like, let him be, let him breathe, let him think. But you have to get that intel, because then we take that and we use it for those supply lines. We use it for helping get other people out. And that's all done through this network that we've kind of cultivated, you know, and when we're there, hey, can we do this? Hey, can this happen? Hey, they need this. All right, let's do it.
What kind of intel is he giving you?
Troop movements, weapons that are being used, what's being hit. Transportation out of the city, you know, like, hey, can you get out in a car? Is there train lines that are working? You know, during your movement, did you see any Russian troops?
Let's go into all of it. What are they hitting?
Kind of everything. I don't think they're being too discriminatory on what they hit. It's obviously they're attacking some of these big cities. You know, we're talking about it, right? The major cities. And
Are they differentiating between civilians and
no,
and military?
not from what we've seen or heard. No.
They're killing everyone.
Yeah, I think what I last heard was there's been more civilians killed than Ukrainian soldiers.
Wow.
So, and I'm sure I can't really speak to what's being shown in the media. Like you mentioned, I'm not really following a lot of it. I followed it before we went. And since I've been back, I've been ear to the ground with the guys that are there. And that's kind of where I'm getting my stuff from. The media there, just to clear up, kind of, okay, yeah, well, you're talking to guys in country. They're just giving you their end of it from what their media says. The media there, because we watch the media every night there, the Ukrainian media, it's very positive. It's very patriotic. Obviously, it's propaganda, but it's it's there to inspire. They're not talking about this many Ukrainians got killed in this town on this front doing this. It's here's the tanks that we blew up. Here's the gypsies stealing tanks, which I'm sure those videos are making the rounds. It's pretty funny, right? These gypsies are stealing Russian tanks. I'll never not laugh at that. It's incredible. It's incredible, right? Just driving down the street in a tank. Their media is very to inspire the people, to keep the spirits up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. If it was me, if it was me putting out that kind of media, I'd prefer it to be unbiased. Here's our wins, here's our losses. Because I think you run the risk of, when you're only talking about the good things your country's doing, if something bad happens, you know, it's war. You're going to win some battles, you're going to lose some. Something really bad happens, you run the risk of the morale of the people taking a nosedive, I think, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, everything over there is very positive, which, again, they're not lying to the people. They're just kind of not talking
Reporting
about
everything.
Yeah, I think they're getting a lot of the negative stuff on Instagram. There's some channels set up on Instagram, Ukrainian channels, that are kind of showing a lot of live footage, a lot of the humanitarian disaster stuff that's going on in cities like Mariupol and all this kind of stuff, where it's just, I mean, they're drinking water out of the drains at this point. Like out of the drains, out of the sewer drains. There's no water, there's no electricity. It's
nothing.
Disaster. Yeah, it's humanitarian disaster, and they're just leveling the city, right? I mean, think of Russia's history, you know, even the wars they had, the two Chechen wars they had, their plan is to go in and decimate everything. Like, tear your whole town to pieces. Because that's going to break you.
I mean, it's a war.
Yeah.
It's
But,
a
I mean...
war. People don't understand war.
Oh,
they don't
no.
understand it, and especially Americans don't understand it. You know, that we've come up with all these rules.
Right.
You know, and there are no rules.
Yeah.
We're the only ones that follow the rules.
And you know, it's very funny. I mean, you've been there, you've done it. I've been there and done it. We follow those rules.
Yeah.
Those rules do get gray sometimes, and you do things that sometimes are off the reservation a little bit. But by and large, we're not attacking civilians, right? I've never seen anybody attack civilians when we were in Iraq or anything like that. We don't attack or destroy towns just for the sake of doing it, right? I mean, but that's different there.
They're there to win.
Yeah, we follow
They're there
these
to
rules.
take over a country.
We follow these rules, and when one mistake happens, God forbid, it's everywhere. And it's like, you guys are shitbags. Hey, look, a mistake happened. I get it. We're not in the business where we can afford to make mistakes, but that happens. It's war. It's not like that there. There's no rules, like you said, and that's their game plan.
The rule is to win.
Yes.
That's
no
the
matter
rule.
what.
Yeah.
And Russia's history has been full of, you know, when they start to stall on an offensive, if they can't take a city, if they're taking heavy losses, all throughout their history, it turns to the civilians.
Yeah.
Because that breaks the people.
Yeah.
And that's going to make the army back off, the opposing army back off, and it's going to get people talking. And that's what is starting to happen in Ukraine as we're sitting here.
What are they worried about? Are they worried about the chemical weapon threat?
Now, I'd say like I said, we're talking about this real time. The last 24, 36 hours, yes, because from what we're hearing, everything's pretty much stalled when it comes to Kyiv and Kharkiv, Mariupol, like all the big heavy front lines. The Russians have been pretty much stalled and are starting to dig in, right? I mean, they're getting blown up. Their tanks are getting blown up with javelins, and they're putting tanks in defensive positions, which now your tanks are just sitting there. At least to me, look, I was never a general level officer. Obviously, I've never planned wars, but that doesn't make sense. So they're digging in, and it's they're showing signs of this desperation. Their morale is low from everything that we're hearing. They've lost more people since the Ukraine war started in 2022. I'm not including everything from 2014, but this year, end of February to now, mid-March, as we're sitting here, they've lost more people than we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan over 20 years.
You know, Putin is, this is what I've read, you know, Putin is actually, because a lot of Russians are upset about what's going on too.
Yes.
And he is actually cremating the bodies so that the Russian people don't see how many deaths they don't want to, he doesn't want his own people to see the stacks of bodies coming back that were killed in Ukraine. So he's actually cremating them in Ukraine and just bringing ashes back so it doesn't look as devastating as it actually is.
Yeah, they've been doing that kind of thing since 2014, and not to bore people with all the history, but there's been Russians in Ukraine fighting since 2014. Secretly, there is some information about this. If you dig, you'll find it. They're not supposed to be there. Down in the south and in the east, there are military groups and paramilitary groups and militias that have been fighting kind of this secret war, Ukrainian groups and Russian groups, since 2014. A lot of people watching this will have heard Vladimir Putin talk about, we're doing this special military operation in Ukraine now to denazify the country and all this. And a Westerner can look at that and go, what are you talking about, denazify Ukraine? Their president's Jewish. Doesn't make any sense. He's crazy. He's not crazy. What's happening with that when he says that I think he's referring to, based on obviously all the research you can do, you'd have to ask the man. But there was a militia battalion from 2014 down in that area of Mariupol called the Azov Battalion. There's about 800-900 of them. Some of them, like if you've heard of the Azov Battalion, you say, okay, they're Nazis, neo-Nazis, Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Not entirely true. Some of them were or are of the 800 or 900. And it's nowhere near 100% of them. I don't know exactly how many, but I know for a fact it's not all of them. And that's what he's talking about. So if you're saying you're going to war with the entire country of Ukraine over a small fraction of 800 to 900 people in that city, that doesn't make sense to me, right?
Yeah.
You say, well, okay, we never saw any neo-Nazi, any white supremacist stuff anywhere in country. We obviously, we're very observant Marines. We're checking all the graffiti in towns. We're checking posters and pictures and, you know, as you would, everything. Right? We're checking everything and going over everything, fine-tooth comb, nothing. We interviewed many people, spoke to many people, none of that going on there. Again, your country gets invaded in 2014, everybody fights against it. You're good guys, and if you have neo-Nazis in your country, they defend the country too. Same thing would happen here. Doesn't mean, it's kind of that saying, all Dalmatians are dogs. but
Yeah.
not all dogs are Dalmatians,
Yeah.
right? It's that kind of thing. So I get it. The Ukrainian government, it's a government. It's probably not squeaky clean. Obviously, think of some of the stuff we've uncovered that our government's done with the Ukrainian government and all that. It's not squeaky clean. But in times of war and when your country gets invaded, some of that has to go out the window. We're not talking, it's not about politics at this point. So, yeah, that whole area down there is being decimated. And people are saying, why Mariupol? Obviously, it's down there by the sea and it's an important kind of location there. But the war's been going on there for the last 14 years. And like you said, they're sneaking bodies back. There are shallow, unmarked graves in some of these areas in Ukraine of Russian soldiers that were there between 2014 and now. And you're like, well, then you get into the long conversation of, well, were they ordered to go there? Are they breaking away from the military and just doing ops across the border in Ukraine? Like, how is all that? That all plays into the war. And I don't think the West is portraying that. Right? It's just Russia, Ukraine, NATO. How does that all play out? And we're not getting the full story on the why for all of this.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Vladimir Putin's crazy. The guy's been pretty sharp his entire career. I don't think he's a madman. I don't think he's nuts. He seems pretty calculated. He always has. But if you
I think they've wanted to do this for a long time.
Sure.
You know, this is, and I mean, I believe you're right. He's very calculated, and the same with China is very calculated, and they don't have to worry about elections, and they don't have to worry about power changing.
Exactly.
And I think they've had this planned for a very long time, and all they've been waiting to do is just push the button. It's all been in place.
They wait for the circumstance where they can push the button.
And they waited until the U.S. was at its weakest point that it's been in a long time, and here we are 1 year in, and they push the button.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
I mean, it has been building up, obviously, since before 2014, but really at that point, it's kind of like, you know, he was working that plan, then 2016 happens, and he backs off. Or backs off. He doesn't do this, we'll say, right?
He had it planned the whole time.
Yes.
He was just waiting for the weakness.
Right.
And they got it. And they know it might take a little bit, and that's why they did it right now.
And it's very tricky because along that eastern side of Ukraine, many of those people don't consider themselves Ukrainians. They consider themselves Russian. They don't speak Ukrainian. They speak Russian. The line divides them, but they don't. They want to be part of Russia. Their local governments, their police departments, their everything there within their infrastructure of their towns and communities is Russian. And so that's sticky, right? I mean, how does that work? Like, you can't just give that, if you're Ukraine, you can't just give that away. They might have to as part of clearing this whole thing up. But we don't understand that whole side of what's going on. You know, I mean, there were things like this with Iraq and Afghanistan too, right? But I don't think, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not watching a lot of the media here in the US. I don't think, though, that is being put out there in the media.
It's not. I mean, I don't watch a whole lot of it either. Like I said, right from the beginning, they've already debunked the media lying about all kinds. They actually found one story that they were putting out that was actually from a video game.
Really?
Yeah, it was from a video game. They were calling him. There was some pilot they were saying that was running around killing all these Russians.
Yeah, I know the story. Yeah.
And it got debunked, and it was actually from a video game.
Like the character?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I think they were even using footage from the video game. And there was another thing that happened too. Though it was like Miss Ukraine, or somebody had an AR-15 or an AK or something, and they were like, look, everybody's armed, and it wound up that was an airsoft gun from like 5 years prior, something. And
yeah, I mean, that's what's good about the internet and the Instagram age and all that, is you can get a lot of information very quickly.
Yeah.
But also you get a lot of that kind of stuff.
Well, that was mainstream media.
Yeah.
Right there. But Fox News, I believe. But I'm sure it was all of them. But anyways, I don't even want to get into the
Yeah, so talking with these diplomats, you know.
one thing though, I'm sorry
ahead.
to cut you off. I want to go back to the chemical weapons because
Yeah.
that is one thing that's big, and they're finding all these labs, which supposedly are pretty irrelevant now. But there is a big, and they just came out again today to saying that it's looking more and more likely that he's going to utilize chemical weapons.
Yeah,
Are they prepared for this at all? Are they worried about it?
Well, I think there's a lot of worry for it, obviously, and it's very worrisome that, you know, we see that they're attacking civilians.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're attacking civilians with tanks and missiles, what's a chemical weapon at that point, right? I mean, it's the next thing in line. It's not.
Well, that will demoralize them even
Yes.
more.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
when you see what those chemical agents are going to do to the human body.
And he's used them before in Syria, right? And you know, yeah, that changes everything. The nuclear thing as well. I mean, he has, and I just researched this in the last couple of days when a lot of talk with the nuclear thing was happening, because it was so funny. One morning, I can't remember what morning it was, but I woke up. It was like 6 a.m. in Ukraine, getting ready to get the day going, and I had like 18 messages on my phone. It was when the day the nuclear plant got attacked. They were actually fighting at the nuclear plant, right? I had like 18 messages on my phone. Everybody back home, like, you guys have to get out of there right now. The nuclear thing and all this. I was like, barely got the sleep out of my eyes. I'm like, okay, whatever, right? I mean, it's war. This is what we're doing here. So the nuclear thing, though, is Russia. We have very kind of strict, as far as I know, protocols on when we would use nuclear weapons, right? Russia does have it in their charter, their kind of ways of doing their country. It's not like a constitution, but you know what I mean, where it does allow the president the smaller tactical nuclear devices, the ability to use those, not freely, but more openly than like if he's using it on an ICBM type thing, right? So that's obviously worrisome as well, especially the point they're at the war, where they're taking these heavy losses and struggling to take over some of these towns that, you know, everybody thought he's just going to run right in and take over Kyiv, for example. It's not happening. They're stalled there. They're fighting like dogs there and fighting the Russians back. You know, I'd imagine there's a lot in this for Putin. If he loses this whole thing, where does a guy like that go from here, right?
Yeah.
Our president's calling him a war criminal, right? I mean, I don't know if that's just rhetoric, but if you start calling people that, that's a legal term, international law type thing, right? So if they pursue that, you know, and then if you're Putin and you feel your back's up against the wall and you have access and permission to use these kind of weapons, I mean, I don't know the guy, but maybe he does use them, right? And I don't think anybody's really prepared for that. I mean, where does our country, where does NATO fit if there's a nuclear or chemical attack? You know, if it's nuclear and that gets in the air and crosses borders, is that an Article 5?
I mean, what's NATO going to do? He's already used them in Syria. Were there any
Didn't do
repercussions?
that, yeah.
No. We've been fighting Al Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS for how many years? Do they fall under
Yeah, but
this?
the difference is if,
You know.
let's say he does a nuclear weapon and some of that goes over into Poland, let's say.
Yeah.
You know, is that enough to trigger an Article 5 thing? I mean, I don't know. They're going to have to play all that out, but
They're still going to have to go get them.
That's the point.
know,
Is you're going to
and they're
have
not
to.
going to.
You're going to have to, or you should go and do something about this guy. I'm not one for obviously saying put Americans there. I'm not one for saying Americans should be flying air missions there.
Yeah.
American pilots. But my personal opinion is, you know, I'm also not for, like, at this point where we are today, the no-fly zone thing's a big talk. You know, the Ukrainians are asking for it. All the people we're talking to are talking about it. I don't think that's even a thing, because if you're having that and it gets broken, you have to enforce it. We're not going to enforce it. It's going to be like the red line in Syria, right? Like, hey, we have a no-fly zone. It gets broken. We're not going to do anything about that. So don't even have it. Don't use it. Don't put it in there and then not do anything about it when it kicks off. But I do think we should be arming them more, which this week obviously steps were taken to do that. A lot of money, a lot of, and I've read the report of what's actually in that aid package, the military aid package. A lot of good stuff, right? But the jets, you know, hey, there's even an opportunity where we're not giving them our jets. Other countries will give them the jets, and we backfill the other countries. I know there's a lot of talk right now that that's offensive action. I wouldn't think flying jets around your own country is offensive. I understand if you take a Ukrainian jet, fly it into Russia and bomb Moscow, for example, that's offensive. But having an air capability within your own country is defensive. I mean, do you agree? You know, giving a guy a javelin and having our intelligence department, who have been in Ukraine for over a month before this happened, just in the talks of it, the CIA paramilitary organization was there teaching these guys how to use javelins, how to properly use sniper capabilities. And I don't know if this has been talked about publicly or not at this point, but this has happened. How can you say that that's defensive and giving jets to defend your own airspace is offensive?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. You know, they are doing a great job with the javelins right now, right? They're taking out a lot of tanks, a lot of aircraft, and that's been huge. But I think we can still do more. It's kind of one of those things like, well, they're doing well, so we don't need to do anything else. No, they're doing well. Help them out on top of that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the nuclear thing, I think it is the more Ukraine fights back, continues to do well, continues to defend their country, puts a lot of pressure on the Russians, and you don't really know what they're going to do under that pressure.
Is there a lot of chatter between these diplomats you were talking to and the guys on the ground that are, I mean, is this a major concern?
When we spoke to the defense, the defense diplomat we spoke to was an attaché to the Minister of Defense at the Ukrainian embassy in this neighboring country. So basically, the representative of the Ministry of Defense in that country at the embassy. At the time we spoke to him, you know, stuff's changed now with the nuclear stuff. We didn't get into that. He was more concerned with they needed war fighters. They obviously have that Foreign Legion thing going on, and you're getting all kinds of people joining that. He gave us some insight into that, and he says it's doing well. They're getting some people with experience, but they're getting a lot of people with no experience. Kind of people with very romantic ideas of just going over and helping, and not just from America. There's all kinds of countries being involved. He says it's great, we appreciate it, but he basically said to us, he's like, we need guys like you. He goes, he said specifically, we need your warriors. If you have any warriors that want to come over here and help, don't send them, don't tell them to go to this International Legion thing. You have them connect with you and you connect with me, and we'll get them set up to do their own thing. Because they're very short of trained people, obviously, and their army in general was heavy outnumbered.
What does he want them for? Does he want them to train his guys, or does he want them on the front lines killing Russians?
Both. So we are we're going to be helping a lot going forward with the training. We're looking for guys, as you mentioned at the top of the show, to go over and train. We're working on how that's going to all work. Again, this was not the plan. This was Zach and I stumbling into this. We made some good strides. It worked, and so we want to replicate it, and we need proper guys to do it. And so we're looking with guys like that. That will be directly done through some of these channels that we're doing. But he also is looking for people that want to go and fight, like special operators that want to go and help. I don't know if that's like, I don't know exactly his plan for that. I know it's not joining a regular, though for those kind of guys, it's not joining a regular Ukrainian army unit. It's different. I know as well there are some groups of former operators that are over there, obviously on the humanitarian side, but on the warfighter side as well, that are on their own program and are working side by side with the Ukrainian military.
Actively engaging.
Yes. I'm not going to talk too much about who those people are and where they are, but they are there, and the diplomats said we want and need more of that.
Okay.
I don't know. Our government has said it's not illegal to go and do that. Obviously, things get grey and get muddy when you're working on an official capacity with their government. We're doing everything through that guy. So it's all kind of above board, kosher, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if anybody is interested in that, reach out. And I know for a fact you won't be put into a regular Ukrainian army unit or one of their foreign groups that they have, which they're doing, and it's incredible. There are people from all over the world that are going to help. I know some guys are there's been some reports of guys who do that, and when they get there, they're they've really misunderstood what they were getting themselves into.
Yeah.
They went there for the romantic idea. Maybe they're LARPers, maybe they're just, former whatever and just want to go help. But when they're there, they're seeing what it is, and hey, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. It's war, right?
Yeah.
But they are appreciative of those guys from all the countries. He told us, he named off 8 or 9 countries that they have people going there. And I know there are some units, like I think there's a group of British guys they're part of that Foreign Legion, but they've separated them out. I know there's a group of Canadians where they've done that, and like, hey, now all you Canadians are a platoon or a company or whatever, and they're still doing stuff for the army. This special operations mission that they're looking for with former operators is going to be separate from all of that, and we can help get those guys in place.
Okay.
So yeah, just reach out if anybody's interested there. But it's only, there's a vetting process, so you're not going to sneak into it, right? And that's kind of that was his focus when he spoke to us, was the training. And basically he said on the training side, how many of you guys can you get to do this? And we were basically, how many guys you need, and we can see what we can spin up, Again, we don't really have the infrastructure for that. We're talking about how to do that. Kind of the intake, the orientation here before everybody punches over, but we're working that right now, and we're working it with...
Are you talking about how to sift through and see who's who?
Yeah, and then...
How are you planning on doing that?
We have a couple of ways. We have some...
Are you going to take like discharge, like DD-214 papers?
Yeah, we have a kind of protocol of what we're looking for. But yeah, we're going to have to see your papers, references, all this kind of stuff.
What exactly are you looking for? Is it strictly special operations guys?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and we're not going to budge on that, right? Because that's what we've committed to doing. Mm-hmm. And we don't want, but this guy's good, or this guy's trained, he's done some Fed stuff before. We're not playing that game. We need those levels of guys. And that's what we've committed to do, and that's what they want. So that's what we're trying to give them.
Well, why don't you just rattle off specific units that you're looking for, or specific MOSs? Like, obviously SEALs, Green Berets, Marine Reconnaissance.
Yeah.
RSOC.
Yes.
TAC P.
Yes.
PJs.
Yep. Yeah.
Rangers.
Any of the Air Force special operations. Obviously, medical's a big component of what we did. We taught them medical classes. Now they have no medical, like simple stuff, like buddy aid type stuff. To get to higher levels of care. That plugging holes, tourniquets, that kind of stuff. So anybody on that side, you know, like SARCs, you know, 18 Delta type people, you know, corpsmen, regular corpsmen, we will not take but a SARC for sure. Air Force we mentioned, and Rangers, yeah, for sure.
Okay. What about SWIC?
Yeah.
SWIC? They
Yeah.
take SWIC. So, as people email in, what do you suggest? Just black out the social security number and
Yeah, for
email
now,
the DD-214?
you know, on the initial contact, just contact, say, hey, this is who I am, I'm interested, and we'll get back to you with our kind of protocol and what we need and,
Okay.
and how we need it, right? Yeah, I mean, if you just start blowing up my email with your paperwork, I'm probably not going to look at it before I want to contact back to you,
Yeah.
right? So don't worry about flooding with that. Just reach out, who are you, and that you're interested, and then we'll go from there. So we'll have a vetting process, and the Ukraine will have a vetting process before these guys cross the border. They'll have to go to that embassy and do whatever process they have that they need done
Okay.
on their side, and then they'll, you know, facilitate getting to the border. We have a good network there for setting up safe houses and transportation and all this. I mean, the whole network's there that we have.
So, back to intelligence. Now China is getting involved, and it sounds like China and Russia are doing maybe a handshake deal, and maybe China might supply Russia with military equipment. Was there any chatter of that? Was there any fear or any of that going on that you heard of from
No,
the
I mean,
Defense Ministry?
obviously that's kind of a new development.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody about that. I think they, being so close to Russia, I think they kind of understand the Russia-Chinese connection that's kind of always been there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, including them. But yeah, I mean, that changes everything, right? I mean, I don't think China would give boots on the ground, but China's got a lot of money, a lot of weapons, and, you know, a lot of ways they can help Russia. So I think that does change a whole lot of what's going on.
Yeah. There's definitely a shift in power happening.
Maybe that takes away some of the nuclear and chemical threat, right? So it may be kind of strange to say, but maybe it's good on that side of things, right? Maybe Russia pulls off that, or at least tables that for a little bit, right? Because if you think about it, he mentioned that a week ago or something, Putin did, the nuclear thing, and then it's been kind of escalating. So maybe China getting involved takes that off the table a little bit. It's kind of one good thing and then a whole lot of bad having China help, though. So that's why this whole thing's so complicated, you know. Because then what does our country do? Are we okay with China getting involved with Russia if we know that it's helping Russia back off some of the chemical and nuclear stuff? Are we okay with that? And if we're okay with that, that's dangerous as well.
Yeah, I don't think we really have any recourse with China. They own our supply chain.
Yes.
So
Right. Yeah. You start kicking that door in, and that could the hurt could come pretty quick. You know, when it comes to
yeah,
supply and all that. So yeah, it's complicated. It's very complicated.
very complicated.
You know, on those levels it's complicated, but then again, you know, those guys on the front, life's pretty simple for them, right? Shoot that way, and it's just strange how the whole thing's planning out. I mean, the China thing does change everything, in my opinion, though.
It was only a matter of time.
Yeah, and it's a way for China to get some of their stuff done without directly having to do it.
Yep. Did you talk to any other diplomats?
Just those two.
I mean, those are big ones.
No, it was incredible. I mean, we were sitting there at that embassy, you know, two Marines who a week ago were sitting at home, not thinking of doing any of this, and now we're sitting there talking with these guys, and you know, it was kind of the echo of the whole mission that we did there. It's just, sure, if we can help, let's do it. we're in this now, right? And it kind of snowballed. Again, I just go back to, we went there to help a friend go home and see his family. He hadn't been home in 11 years. And this happens, and it's just getting him home to see his family, and next thing you know, we're sitting with diplomats in an embassy in a third party country. You're like, this is crazy, you know. But you know, we have the ability to help. We kind of have a will to help people, and we're gonna keep pushing.
At what point did you go forward observe? So you went from the Green Beret mission,
yeah,
to now you're doing your old job,
yeah.
reconnaissance.
So we obviously, when we were there, people kind of were hearing what we were doing. We were moving and shaking, doing a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of NGOs trying to get there, trying to help, trying to get supplies in. Some of it is very romantic, kind of whimsical, like, hey, we want to save the world and all this kind of stuff. Some of it is obviously actionable and is going to pan out, but we were contacted by a lot of people, and there was one group that seemed to have a lot going and needed help. They had some guys, they had 2 Green Berets and 2 SEALs that were going to be on, former Green Berets and SEALs. I have to make that clear. I don't want people thinking, if I mention that, it's former. I'm not saying there's our active people are there doing anything. That we're going to be on the ground for this team, for this organization. So right then and there, I felt comfortable with, like, hey, even if the organization is kind of doesn't have all its ducks in a row, these guys will be good to go. I don't know who the guys are. I mean, I know their names, but I don't know these guys. And we took, you know, Zach and I kind of talked. He was all for it. I kind of had reservations on jumping in and helping because we had our own stuff going on. And we had a pretty strict routine on what we were doing, when and how. But they were going to help us with some supply stuff, or they said they could help us with some supply stuff on their organizational level. And again, you know, it's just that mission, like, hey, you need help, we'll help you. And so part of our day involved setting up an easy transition for them to come in, getting safe houses for them, locking on simple stuff like how they're going to eat, right? Getting food set up for them, transportation, translators, warehouses for their stuff, and trying to connect them into our network, which I'm very protective of because of the people there. I love those guys, right? I love who they are. I love what they're doing. I don't want to be sending them people that's going to mess up what they have going on there, because it's, like I said, it's incredible. You have to see it to believe it, what these guys are doing. And I don't want to just hand over anybody to them. So kicking the tires on that handoff was kind of stressful, kind of intricate. It's still kind of dodgy. We're trying not to manage it because we're not there now, right? And we're not, this organization is not us. But trying to manage that, and so we actually got arrested because of what we were doing for them. They tell you the story, getting arrested. So in our AO, we were pretty well known and very well helped. Anything we needed, there's a guy for that. Anything in the network, anything in town, hey, I need lunch, there's a guy for that, right? I need a car, I need this, I need that, there's a guy for that. This other organization was trying to set up a warehouse for a lot of their supply that was going to be coming in. Okay, we'll go and we'll recon that for you, no problem. It's about 40 minutes away from our AO. We had been in that town the very first day we arrived in country. We went there with Sasha, and he made a very cursory kind of connection for us there through the authorities in that town. We didn't operate in that town. We didn't run any kind of, nothing. We didn't do anything to that point. We grabbed the driver. It was me, Yuri, our guy. Obviously, he's going to be our terp, and me and Zach. There was a connection that we had it's kind of, you know how it works. It's like layers of stuff. This guy said to this guy to talk to. It's like, again, bad game of telephone. We know that connection was pretty legit. Former intelligence operative US was connecting us through this other group to this contact in that town. Kind of complicated. We try calling the guy. He says, call the guy. He's expecting you to call today. Calling the guy, no answer. We said to Sasha, hey, do you want to come with us? Because we want you connecting with these guys for the supply chain to get stuff to the front from this area now. No, I'm busy. I have other stuff to do. Thank God he didn't go. We get in the car. We punch out. Still trying to call the guy. No answer. All right. They have like an underground place there in that town. We'll look for it and we'll look for the warehouse. Our instructions were basically find this guy or find the priest that was working that area. Right? Like 2 needles in a haystack. Go find these guys. It's not how we work. I told Zach right away. I said, look, man, we would never run something like this. It's okay. We'll be all right. And not that I had a weird feeling about it, but it's just not how we were doing a job for another group. We wouldn't have done the job the way they were doing it. Right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of grumpy about it. But we go and we get there. There's still no response from the guy. We can't find the place. We're out snooping and pooping, looking around, trying to like, if you picture like, it's not like this, but like a strip mall where there's a bunch of different storefronts. We're back off the street trying to see all of them, buy some train tracks and buy some infrastructure. We saw some warehouses by a wood mill. Let's go see if any of those warehouses are a needle in a haystack. You know what? Let's go talk to the mayor. He'll know who we are. We'll tell him what's going on. See if he can connect us to this guy. So as we're kind of driving back around town, through the town to go to find the mayor, does a police car not come screeching in front of us, almost head-on collision with us. These 2 guys come out of the car. They're almost tripping over their own feet. AKs drawn on us, right? Weapons off safe. They didn't say anything to us. They didn't say get out of the car. They didn't give us any instructions. We get out of the car, hands up. They start telling us to put our hands on the car at that point, and there's 4 of us, and we're kind of positioned on the car. I'm kind of the back passenger side. Zach is the back driver's side. Yuri's kind of over the driver's side door, and the driver's a total civilian as well, probably peed down his leg. And I'm looking straight at the guy, AK pointed. There's a guy behind me with the AK pointed, and these guys are shaking like leaves, Shawn. And I'm thinking, as soon as these guys know who we are, we're gonna be fine, right? We're not Russian saboteurs. They're gonna know who we are. They'll have heard of us, and they can call anybody that we've been working with, the colonel, whoever, right? But these guys are like visibly shaking, weapon off safe, guns pointed at us. I'm gonna get shot here. In 10 minutes, or as soon as they can get me in front of somebody to explain what we're doing, we're fine. But this guy could shoot us right fucking here.
Yeah.
You know? They didn't search us. They were scared. Didn't even search us, right? Put handcuffs on one of us. They yelled to a guy in a store, convenience store, to come out, go into their police car and find other handcuffs. They were terrified. So they finally get enough handcuffs. They didn't have enough handcuffs for me or Zach. They handcuffed the driver and poor Yuri, and the two Marines are the ones not handcuffed.
No.
And I'm just looking at Zach like this is a joke. Another cop car comes. We all end up in handcuffs. They get us back to the police station. They bring in the Secret Service and the Ukrainian Secret Service, and they start interrogating us and talking to us and all that. Obviously, our story checks out. We give them our phones. They start kind of going through the phones, and they can confirm everything that we're doing. We said, talk to the colonel, blah, blah, blah. Now, Yuri at this point, he's been our translator. And for people at home that don't really understand, it's not as simple as like, hey, just tell me what he says when you're working with a translator, right? There's a way to it. As we're translating with Yuri, it's Yuri, tell him exactly what I said, how I said it. right? If I'm pissed off, you tell it to him like I'm pissed off. And then tell me exactly what this guy says back. I don't want your opinion. I don't want, you giving him your opinion on what I've said. I want exact. That's how you work a translator, right? At this point, though, Yuri's kind of he's not translating. He's talking to them. And that's fine. We're sitting there in handcuffs. And by the way, they put the handcuffs on backwards. So we're sitting there and that's not comfortable at that point when the handcuffs are on backwards and you're twisted up. And I'm like, maybe I'll ask them if they could fix the handcuffs, but I'm not going to push my luck, right? So he's going back and forth, and I'm just checking in with Yuri, like, okay, what's he saying? And I'm being quiet, and he's asking about our contact. Who's this guy where Yuri's explaining? Some time goes by, Secret Service guys talking to us and interviewing us, and this guy comes in with the chief of police. And he goes, is this your guy? And Yuri says, I don't know. We don't know who our guy is. That's part of the problem. Zach said, if you give me my phone, I'll text our other contact and see if they can send a picture of the guy. They allow him to do that. At this point, they know that we're, not Russian saboteurs. They start talking to that guy. Are you their guy? No. Do you work are you doing this kind of work? No, I don't know anything about that. Are you, and they say the name, are you this specific guy? No. Some other stuff starts going on. Yuri kicks off, gets visibly angry and animated. And I say, Yuri, what's going on? He goes, that's the guy. I said, no, it's not the guy. He said he's not the guy. He goes, no, that's the guy. He's been lying about the whole thing. And I'm sitting there in handcuffs. And I kid you not, I could have jumped up and bit that guy's throat, right? I was so angry. The guy thinks he's in a James Bond movie, right? And so and the Secret Service guy's looking at me kind of laughing and winking and saying I understand why you're pissed off, man. I was ready for charging across the room to the guy. And so we asked him, why didn't you pick up your phone? You knew that people would be calling you. You were told that by your contact that we'd be calling. And he goes, oh, I didn't recognize the number. It's troubling times. I didn't want to just pick up the phone to a random number. Okay, well, why did you lie and say that you weren't who you are? Oh, I thought this was a setup, he said. Again, I could have bit his neck.
Yeah.
Right? And then, it was all hugs and kisses with the Secret Service and the police after that. And what's funny, those guys actually helped us. They gave us an escort out of the country when we left. And it was cool. We made Secret Service contacts through those guys and with the chief of police in that town. And they had obviously heard what we were doing. So we built a strong contact in that area through this. But yeah, that whole thing was crazy. And the guys were so scared. The police officers were so scared. They had just found 4 Russian saboteurs about 3-4 hours before they rolled us up. So they thought this is round 2. There's more. When they rolled us up, they thought we were Russian saboteurs.
Wow.
So then we had to go and do the rest of kind of the op with that guy, with the shady guy, and he wanted to be all hugs and kisses, and I was like, man, get the hell away from me. We had to go out to this area and recon this whole kind of safe house and warehouse and connect with this other guy, and I was like, I want to get this done, right? I want away from this guy. And when we got back, I said, get rid of that guy. Don't use him again. He's scared. That's fine, right? I get it. But now we're going to be bringing other guys in to work with.
He's not the right guy for the job.
He's not the guy for the job. And part of the whole turnover thing, we wanted to do turnover with that team of ODA guys and SEALs that was coming in. And their organization couldn't get them off the ground in time. It's 18 hours we were there and you can't get these guys off the ground to do some of this turnover stuff, which obviously only they were going to have the backlash of that, right? And then they weren't going to have that warm kind of handover. But yeah, stuff like that, it makes you realize there's a lot of people now that are just trying to go over there and help. If you don't know what you're doing, we knew what we were doing. We had a very I keep talking about our network. We had a pretty good way of being able to do things, and we still got into trouble. So don't think you can just go over there and start playing, war hero or humanitarian hero. It's not easy. You have to have your ducks in a row, or you're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
Because those people aren't playing around. There's Russians in their country, right? This is not a hurricane. It's not a natural disaster. It's not.
They don't know who's who.
Yes.
And you might get killed because of some confusion.
Yeah, and it was pretty real. I mean, I knew, like I said, I knew we'd be fine because of who we were and what we were doing, and it ended up being we got great contacts out of it. But yeah, it was kind of dodgy there for a while. But it was because of that group that, so then that's the other thing too. We probably made a mistake there. We should have called ahead. We did have a network there. We had contacts there with the rescue service and with some people there. Outside of everything that we were doing with this other group, we should have called ahead, especially when we couldn't get that guy on the phone. We should have called and said, hey, we're going to be here, and everything would have been fine. So, I mean, that was definitely a mistake on our end, and, luckily it didn't turn out too bad for us. But yeah, it's one of those things. You have to dot every I and cross every T when you're snooping and pooping, doing stuff like that,
Yeah.
Because it wasn't our AO. And we just kind of took that for, it's one of those things where we took for granted how, how loved we were in our AO and how everybody just helped us and facilitated everything for us. We could do whatever we want in our AO, and everybody supported us from top to bottom. I think we kind of took that for granted when we went 40 minutes down the road. We just, a simple call ahead to our contacts there, we wouldn't have been in trouble then, But yeah, that was, it was kind of wild. And Yuri was kind of upset about it because there was some local Instagram chatter about it and some pictures of us driving around and like the vehicle we were in and all this kind of stuff. And so he was kind of worried about it on a local level, people hearing all this kind of stuff. And it's like, obviously he doesn't have any experience with this, and just trying to tell him like, look, hey, when you go and do this stuff in a foreign country, stuff happens. You know, it's kind of part of the game. You don't want that to happen. I'm sure you've been in situations that weren't ideal. It happens. But coaching him through that was, again, pretty interesting on a personal level, because he had never experienced that, and we had good jokes about it as well. It was unbelievable. So yeah, it's not kids games over there at all.
What an experience. Is there any other intel that you picked up? You'd mentioned people getting shot outside of a grocery store, civilians.
Yeah, so there's a lot of attacks on civilians happening now. I'm sure some of those stories are making it to our media, right? Especially where a lot of the heavy fighting is, and especially where the Russians are starting to run into heavy resistance. This was not happening in the beginning of the war. This is something that has developed, and it's not by mistake. It's not, hey, we thought this was happening, we thought it was a military thing and it accidentally was a shelter. Or it's not that. There's one story where people were lined up outside the store to get food, like a convenience store, bread, whatever, and Russians came. There was 12 people, 12 people, just gunned them down. The Ukrainians were starting to mark, when this started happening, the Ukrainians started to mark civilian centers. So like if a bunch of civilians were sheltering up in a school, they would mark that school with something from the air, like on the ground, so they could see in the air, hey, there's children here, civilians here, whatever. And those places are basically, what happened is the Ukrainian army's marking targets, civilian targets for the Russians.
Damn.
And those places are getting hit now. So there's a
So
change.
the Russians are looking for the marks where the civilians are being held, and then killing them.
Or they're seeing the marks and not caring, right?
Yeah.
And, that gets muddy as well, because, for instance, the army guys both of the army units that we were training were living in schools, right? They turned these schools, there's nobody in the school, no kids there. The schools are not functioning right now. But they were using those buildings because they're big, they have open rooms, they have bathroom facilities and all this. They were using those as like makeshift army bases. So I guess on one hand, if you're a Russian military commander, you can say, well, yeah, we target the school because it's a military target. There's army there. That to me is fair game. There's no kids in that school, right? The Ukrainian military is not using human shields to house their military. There's no kids in the school, no civilians in the school. But if you clearly see it's civilians, you should not be obviously attacking those places. You know? And that is a new tactic that they're starting to do within the last 48, 72 hours. They're really starting to do that, you know?
Wow.
And that's a bad sign.
That's a real bad sign.
And Russia historically has been known to do that. So, yeah, I don't know where that leads. I don't know how involved we get to try and stop some of that. I'd hope our diplomats are speaking to the Russians and saying, hey, you know, it's not a red line, but don't do that kind of stuff. Because that changes everything, I think.
Yeah, that definitely changes it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, a lot of that happening, and you know, that's gonna be a good way to break those people, because the Ukrainians right now, one thing that both Zach and I still talk about and noticed right away was how passionate the people are for the country and how much they want to defend it. Everybody, you know, I talk about that town we were in. Everybody's helping in the war effort. Everybody, right? It's like an old school movie. It's like a World War II story. From the oldest to the youngest are helping somehow for the war effort. Again, I mentioned the TV is very positive and inspiring to the people, and they're getting great results, right? They're doing great with the javelins. They're blowing up Russian tanks. The gypsies have they have a tank battalion now, these gypsies, right, for stealing the tanks. I mean, it's very rah-rah, very motivational. And I'm sure that's helping the boys on the front get the job done, right? But Russia sees that, obviously. Yeah. And, you know, you start attacking civilians, especially behind, if you notice, they're starting to, or at least what I'm hearing, I don't know if they're saying this, they're starting to attack these civilian centers behind the lines, behind the front. So with a missile, they're going over the front and hitting people in the rear.
Damn.
Which... You're not doing that by mistake.
Yeah.
If it's at the front and you think you're attacking a certain building and you miss and you accidentally hit civilians, okay, we can talk, that happens. But now you're hundreds of miles away from the front blowing up this building or that building, or, you know, that's done on purpose. Yeah. And that's not good if that's being done on purpose. And that, I think, could really, you know, I'm talking to some people every day, and that's very troublesome for them. That's making them cry as they're talking to me. Yeah. Right? That's affecting the people, obviously. So yeah, hopefully that gets cleared up and somebody can talk some sense into the Russians, like, look, hey, if you want to fight, right? But don't do that.
I don't even know what to say to that. You know,
it's unbelievable.
It's. I just don't see anybody holding them accountable.
Yeah, and again, we've talked a lot on a couple of examples of this. Like,
it's a lot of talking.
Here's a good thing,
no action,
but then also brings a bad thing, right? This is one of those things, because the Russians or the Ukrainians are doing so well at defending their country and fighting the Russians that it's causing, or it's making Russia use these kind of tactics. So then what do you do if you're the Ukrainians? Do you back off? I hope to God look, I don't work in the government, I'm not a diplomat, but I'd hope they're not telling the Ukrainians back off so that Russia stops doing this.
Yeah.
Because then you back off, you let them advance. You know, I think, as you're mentioning, we should be a lot tougher on Russia. I mean, I think we always should be tough on Russia.
I mean, it's tough, you know. I mean, not even just the U.S., but even Europe. I mean, they've allowed themselves to get 40% of their gasoline from Russia. And so if Russia cuts that...
We were in Germany. Germany gets, I think, 100% of their oil from Russia.
Yeah, so, I mean, what are they going to do? Nothing. They're not going to do anything.
Right.
Because they're reliant on Russia. You know? I mean, and now, I mean, you see our fuel prices. Saudi won't even pick up the phone for us.
Imagine not
They will
picking up
not
the
even
phone
pick up the phone.
for the United States of America.
Yeah.
I mean, and what's funny about this, I say funny, you know, when back in my day, when I was running and gunning, I didn't deal with any of this.
Yeah.
Right? I was doing that job and, you know, a trigger puller, go kick this door in, this patrol, that, whatever, right? Now, dealing with it on this level is very different. And like I said, I'm not a diplomat, but I'm working with these people. I'm working with this network. We're doing this job now that we've stumbled into. And it's complicated. It's you know, you think, I mean, we think about it all the time. Zach and I are constantly checking in. What about this? How does this change things? We just heard from this guy about whatever. You know, my mind's full enough, and now it's full of this stuff, and you know, it would be easy. It's not my country. It's not my mission. It is now, but you know, I could pull the plug and forget it, I suppose. But it's just a snowball, man. It just keeps getting bigger and more involved and changes every day. It's very weird to be on this end of it. Having been on the other end, it doesn't get to interact with that at all.
Yeah.
It's very, I don't know, it's very interesting. But it keeps the head spinning, for sure.
Sounds like it. Well, let's take a break. And then when we come back, we'll kind of get into your nonprofit and some of the other stuff you've done and wrap this up.
Perfect.
All right, Mark, so let's get in. We covered a lot on Ukraine, pretty much your whole experience over there, the diplomats, the intel you're getting on the ground. Let's move into your nonprofit, what you guys have been doing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this just now a 501c3?
Yeah, so the status is pending, obviously. It's with the government, everything takes a little while, but yeah, it started off, it's pretty recent, fairly recent, when the Afghanistan pullout was happening. I was working with a team, working with a team to go over there and help with some stuff over there. We didn't have an organization or anything like we do now. And so I was down in Virginia Beach, had taken some meetings about going to Afghanistan. Came home from those meetings, and it was when the Hurricane Ida was about to hit. So I just got back off the flight and was sitting kind of watching TV, getting settled back into being home, and was following the hurricane coverage. You know, I like watching that kind of stuff on TV when the disasters come, to keep up with what's happening. And my wife at the time was 5 months pregnant. So part of me was like, how am I going to tell her that I'm going to Afghanistan? She's not going to care. Well, she's going to care. But my wife she knows what she married, you know. And I always say I don't ask, I just tell. But it's not bad. I'm not a arsehole like that. It's more, she gets it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So okay, I'm gonna have to tell her. I might get a bit of an ear beating, but I have to tell her. And I was just sitting there watching the coverage, and they were talking about the hurricane. And I'd never really done any humanitarian type stuff before, right? And I text one of the guys. He's one of the guys on our team. He's a former Albanian special forces guy. He's a savage, right? I mean, he's one of those legendary, just savage guys. And I text him. I say, hey, what do you think about going down to the hurricane and getting involved right in the beginning, like when people really need help? You know, like just going down there and throwing it at the hurricane and helping people. And he just texts back, yes. I didn't tell him when. I didn't tell him what. I didn't say how many days. I just basically said, you want to go help? Yes. So now I go, all right, well, you can't turn a guy like this away. We're going. Rounded up a couple other guys. Same kind of way that we did with Ukraine, quickly, you know. Planned to step out the next day, early morning. And I had most of it planned with the guys set up before I went to my wife. So I go to her and I say, hey, me and a couple of guys are going to go down to the hurricane, so when this thing hits, we're going to start helping people. She goes, okay. And I was like, okay, like that. She goes, well, I thought you were going to tell me you were going to Afghanistan. So she goes, on you go to the hurricane. So I was easy conversation there, right? And I didn't even tell her about Afghanistan. She didn't know why I went to Virginia Beach. I think she had a suspicion. But yeah, so she was very happy to kick me out the door down to the hurricane. So we went and we had a plan. We just got in trucks and drove south. That was the plan till it rained.
Wow.
And when we got there, halfway down, my wife sent an app and said, hey, have you guys seen this app? I can't remember what the app is. We basically was in a disaster area. You can fill out this app. It creates a ticket. Hey, I need help. I'm stuck. Whatever, right? And we started looking at it like, hey, this thing, we could use this. Not for that purpose of going and helping those individuals, but we used it to see where the mass amount of tickets are.
Makes sense.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
We're not going through these individual things and coming and getting your cat out of a tree or doing this or doing that. We want to see where all this shit is happening. We couldn't get into that town.
Why not?
I can send you some pictures as well if you want to post them. The whole overpass and ramp completely underwater to go to this area. It's about 11 miles from New Orleans. Couldn't get there. There were semi-trucks underwater. The trailers under the water. And so, okay, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know where we're at. Let's go to New Orleans. We went to New Orleans. Stopped right outside the Superdome. It was like zombies, zombie apocalypse. Nobody on the streets, bone dry, right? Bone dry. The power was out, so everything was kind of dark. And it was very creepy. It was like you wouldn't know the hurricane was there. Obviously, we learned that since Katrina, they've done a lot to the New Orleans area to protect it from that happening again, because obviously that was horrendous what happened there. And in my opinion, it seems to be whatever they've done in New Orleans has been to the detriment of some of the surrounding areas. Because we found a back way into that town that we couldn't get into. It was, I think, 38 miles out of our way. We had to go around. It was a town called La Place. And it ended up being one of the worst hit areas in Hurricane Ida. We didn't know that at the time. We just saw that these tickets were there. We went there, helping some people in the water. We got into the town, helping some people in the water and you know, trying to get a lay of the land. The governor was going there to do a photo op. We were on the outskirts of town. Saw this commotion at this gas station. There was a CBS guy there. Run into this CBS guy, we're in his ear. Tell us this, where can we do this? How's that going? He gave us the whole layout of everything that was happening in that area. And it was like, you know, it's kind of like some of the stuff we talked about with Ukraine. If you're just doing the thing, you run into opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The chances of us, if we could have got off that ramp the couple hours before, we never would have ran into that guy. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
just the fact that we were trying to do stuff, we could have also said, well, can't get into that town, let's go somewhere else. But you run into that guy, CBS News guy, who knows everything that's happening in that area, nipping in his ear, he gives us all the information. Now we know what we're doing. Now we know where to go, who needs help, what kind of help they need, and we just start hitting the town. You know, we did a lot of stuff. We were clearing roads for EMS. They were running into problems with, say a fire truck, and there's a giant tree in the middle of the road. They're not going to take care of it for a couple of reasons. They can't have that truck go down, and they can't get themselves hurt trying to get to the emergency. So they just don't go, or they try and find another way. So we said, okay, we'll help you. We'll go on ahead of you and get the chainsaws and start clearing roads and doing this, and so they can move. Cutting people out of houses. We had a couple people, trees had fallen in their houses and they're stuck in the house. So we're doing that kind of stuff. There was a family, old couple, very overweight. I'm talking like 4 spins, like very obese, overweight. Stuck in the house, on oxygen, all this kind of stuff, and a tree had fallen on their house, massive tree. It got to the point we were cutting, we estimated 12 to 1,600 pound sections of this tree above our heads to try and get because it was going to cave their house in. They said, we've just been sitting here in the living room and last night the roof started to cave in. Well, you guys have to get out of here. And the news guy told us that. He said, look, if you see people here, you have to tell them to leave. Like people that haven't left, tell them to leave because we can't get emergency services in here or food or anything to support them. So try and get them to leave. Well, these people in Louisiana are very tough people. They've been through this stuff and they weren't leaving, right? And this old couple, they couldn't leave. They were struggling physically they would have not been able to. But we tried to get them out of there. They're like, we can't go. We don't have a place to go and we can't go. And we're like, all right, well, let's try and get the tree off the roof. And it's above our heads. We're up on ladders. We're tying ropes to this thing. One bad move and we would have been crushed, So we start doing some of that stuff. Getting food and water to some people, just what we had. We couldn't give people our gasoline because we needed it. And we ran into a problem with gasoline because there was one gas station in the town and that turned into like the cantina from Star Wars as well. It was very rough there because it was the lifeblood of the town. And the gas lines were, I think one day we sat in a gas line for 4 hours to try and get fuel, and we had brought fuel, and then it got to the point where as days went by, no electricity, there was no FEMA, there was no Red Cross in that area when we were there. 3-4 days go by and people don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have electricity, and they don't have gas. Our fuel supply was getting low, and because what we would do is for security reasons, we would stay outside the town on the outskirts and then just punch in to do some work, and then we'd go back. We basically took over an abandoned kidney dialysis building and just kind of set that up as our little base of operations, and we had a watch and punched out at night and then punched out and did stuff during the day. We're running out of fuel though. It got to the point where if we can't get fuel on this day, we need to leave because the closest place to get fuel was 160 miles away. So we're doing the math on how much fuel we have, and we don't want to become part of the problem. So we couldn't get fuel. There was no fuel coming into the town that day. So we had to leave. And, we had done a bunch of good stuff there. But as the week went on, just society was deteriorating because of no food, no water, no electricity. And people were pretty desperate. So we got home. We drove all the way home. We arrived home at like 6 a.m. A couple of hours sleep. And by noon we had a plan to go back down. I just texted the guys and said, let's go back and do like a food drop kind of thing. So we got another truck, a couple other guys, rented trailers, and we're going down I-55 from Chicago to Louisiana, hitting Walmarts on the way, right? I think we stopped at 5 Walmarts in 4 or 5 different states, and we just walked in and said, I said, I need to speak to the manager. Nobody's in trouble. Everything's good. Just need to speak to a manager. Manager comes. I said, okay, we need pallets of water. She goes, yeah, there's cases of water back there. I said, look, ma'am, you're saying cases. I'm saying pallets. Said, okay. So they were fantastic, though, you know, getting us all the stuff. And then we're like, food. We're taking food. All right, well, what food? How are we taking food? We decided on the Chef Boyardee pull top cans of all the stuff they make, spaghetti, meatballs, raviolis, because it's easy. You pull the top, you don't even need a fork. You just eat it out of the can. So we raided the shelves. I'm sure that day that we did that to those 5 Walmarts, if you were in the inventory management section of corporate, you're thinking, you know, the alarms are going off, right? Because we raided everything. And we had raised some money. Before we stepped off, we opened a GoFundMe. Like I said, we didn't have an organization. We were just doing it through us. We had a GoFundMe, and people were donating. And we have a you know, my jiu-jitsu academy in Chicago is large and great people, and they did a great job of getting the word out. And we were getting donations. So, but I told the guys before we stepped off, I said, look, this is my thing. If nobody gives us a dime, I'll take the hit. It'll be my credit card.
Wow.
Right? I'm not asking anything of these guys except for their time and their effort. You know, I'll put it all on me. But I believed people would support what we were doing. And they did. It was great. And so we were able to get all that stuff. We filled the trailers and kept hitting the Walmarts. And it was funny because, again, we're just doing this on personal credit cards. My credit cards are locking up. I'm on the phone with somebody in Indonesia somewhere trying to get them to unlock because I'm in different states. I'm doing what a criminal would do, going right down the highway into all these different states, hitting item limits, hitting dollar limits on purchases. And I'm on the phone outside screaming like, unlock, we need to verify. So I'm like, you're not verifying? No, I'm kicking off, right? It was so funny. And then we get down there and we went back to that area where the gas station was, because everybody went to that gas station. A lot of shady stuff happening at that gas station, even with the local authorities. Like, the police would go inside and get food and all this kind of stuff, but outside people couldn't go in. A lot of shady stuff going on. You know, you had good people, desperate people, and we stayed there and we did a food drop there. I think we were handing out water and food for 9 hours. It was 106 degrees heat index.
Damn.
And we were non-stop there. And it was great because people were in that gas line. They had gas that day. And I just walked right into the gas station. I said, here's what we're doing. We're not going to interfere with people getting gas. We're going to set up out by the street. And do you guys need any food? And these people looked at me like they couldn't believe it. They said, look, I haven't eaten all week. And she's in a gas station full of food and drinks. It's very strange what was going on.
That's kind of odd.
And they weren't letting anybody go into that gas station to get stuff. All the pharmacy, like Walgreens type stuff, CVS, were all boarded up because people were looting throughout the week and all this.
Yeah.
It was a very strange situation, but we just sat out there for 9 hours and handed food out. I mean, my hands and feet and arms were all swollen, like with the heat and just, I mean, I had pictures of my hands. It's like my fingers were sausages. It was non-stop. We never took a break, and we just did that. And then when we were done, it was dodgy getting out of there because we only had so much food and so much water. And again, after 9 hours, and I saw we were getting low towards the end of our drop, and I see all the cars still, and I'm like, it might be dodgy getting out of here. And we had to do the whole wrap everything up and punch. You know, it would have been nice to kind of sit there and savor that moment, but it was pretty dangerous at that point because people were pissed. I mean, we were handing out food and water, and when we had none left, people were getting angry.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's desperation, right?
Yeah.
So then we got out of there and came home and stuff, and I started thinking, I was like, you know what? We have the right type of people. The military guys we have and the support people that we have, like, we can do something with this. Like, we can keep this going, and we can help people, right? We can do all the stuff that either people can't do or won't do, right? In those kind of situations.
That was the first one.
That was the first one. Yeah, and so my business partners and I started putting some stuff together to try and create it and turn it into something. And then we started helping out with the guys from Save Our Allies, with the Afghans. We were focused mainly on Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. We would do clothing runs up there and take a bunch of supplies up there for them. Spend long weekends up there working in the kind of Afghan villages, connecting with people, and it was kind of messy up there. You know, what an undertaking that is with those guys. You know, and they've done a fantastic job, and it was great of them to kind of, because I came in and I said, look, kind of selfishly I said, I don't want to come up here and volunteer for Save Our Allies. I don't want to work for you. I want to work with you on the stuff. And they were very receptive to that, and they enabled us to do that and helped us, and we worked alongside their volunteers and with the Team Rubicon guys that were up there with the 82nd Airborne, and there was an Army engineering company I think that was up there too, and then some of the State Department people. But that whole, the military, the NGO, and the State Department intermingling is difficult to navigate. And again, I don't have a background in NGO type stuff, so that was a good way to learn that there's a lot going on when you start working at that kind of level. But that was a great experience. And then we were doing that, and then November came, and November was the thing that happened with my daughter, right? So long story, my daughter had a brain tumor, and we found out in basically 20 minutes she needed to have the first of 2 brain surgeries, like out of nowhere. And my wife was 8 months pregnant at that time. So we started dealing with that, and, you know, at the same time trying to really create something on this NGO side for Overwatch Foundation, or what is now Overwatch Foundation. Obviously I took some time away from kind of being out in the field and doing some of the hands-on stuff for obvious reasons. Daughter with brain surgery at 4 years old, and then new baby coming. But once that kind of cooled down, we start, you know, continuing to grow the thing, working on raising money and how to do that properly and effectively, and just creating contacts and all that. And then the Ukraine thing popped up, and so all the humanitarian stuff we've been doing has been through Overwatch Foundation. And, you know, it's still, our 501c3 is pending. You know, we have a good team that helped us on the legal side, working all that stuff out. And yeah, just looking forward to the future and having that infrastructure within that organization to allow us to do more of this kind of stuff, because we have the guys that can get it done. So let's go, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's amazing.
Yeah, I never thought of doing anything like this. I never had a plan to do that, and it's just working. You know, we can make a difference with stuff, and we're gonna keep going with it.
How's your daughter?
She's good. Yeah, I mean, she's incredible. She's probably the best human I've ever met. You know, and I have other kids, but there's something special about that little girl, and she still is in her physical therapy and pushing through all that. And, you know, it's the thing that's tough about it is it's a constant thing, right? I mean, you know, I tore my pec a year ago, and I had a year-long recovery. I had surgery, I had to reattach it to my humerus, and I did all the physical therapy for a year. But then once it's healed, it's over, right? My pec now is better than before I tore it. With this, she can God willing, be great for the next 5 years, and then heaven forbid, something could pop up again. So every win is a win for now,
Yeah.
and you don't know, for tomorrow. But I told my wife, I said, I mentioned this to you too. I said, this stuff happens to people, and it's better that it happens to us than somebody else because we can take it. It's enough to break people, something like that. I mean, can you imagine? So yeah, it's and the Ukraine thing's tough because now I'm halfway across the world, or all the way across the world, in a war zone, and families at home, and there's heavy stuff happening at home with that. It's like, why do you do that? Why don't you just stay home with the family? But part of being a father, and is being an example. And she knows that we went there. She's friends with Yuri's daughter. My daughter's 4, Yuri's daughter is 3, and she knows that Dad went with me as dad to help him.
Wow, that's powerful.
And she'll know as we continue to do this stuff, and it's just a good way to be an example for the kids, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're at, and we're just trying to, it's weird, the hurricane thing just kind of fell on the lap, and we're going to continue to do that. God, heaven forbid there's any more hurricanes. I hope there never is, but that affect people like that. But we'll be there to help and do what we can. And the Ukraine thing fell on the lap as well, and this is the kind of thing we're going to do. When these things pop up, we'll pop in. Another thing that we're really doing with the foundation is we're using veterans, guys who are out, or we have a couple guys who are more recently out, and it helps them scratch that itch a little bit, being around other veterans, doing something that's doing a mission that's worthwhile, helping people. We're not running around trying to do anything crazy. Some of the stuff we've done has been pretty dangerous, but it's not like it's a group of warmongers trying to do something stupid,
Yeah.
But I can see some of these guys light up when we're together, when we're doing this stuff, and that's pretty rewarding. So as we grow, again, same for the Ukraine mission, we're going to be looking for guys to, special operators to do some of the crazy stuff we're doing, military veterans in general that can help, and civilian support people. We have, for the foundation, we have a great group of civilian support people that are very handy, very organized, that are go-getters. For those kind of missions, it doesn't always have to be special operations vets. I just want to help vets in general and give them, a little bit of purpose, a little bit of a goal to be able to help people and use some of their life skills to do that,
Yeah. Man, it's incredible. It really is.
It's we're in the beginning, but I think there's something there for sure.
I think there's something there too. I mean, just by hiring veterans and I mean, on top of all the other stuff you guys are doing, that's, saving lives, saving countries, everything you're doing. And then you're also giving veterans who may be a little lost, because it's tough
Yeah.
to transition. You're giving them a purpose again, and something they can be proud of again. And that's another big thing that's not really talked about, is how do you find something that you're proud of what you're doing again after you leave,
Exactly.
especially a special operations unit,
Yeah,
And,
I obviously, I'm not going to get into it right now, but I had a struggle kind of when I got done personally, right? Just kind of dealing with life, dealing with people. What do I do next? And, you've heard countless stories like that as well. It's difficult. And I suppose there are resources to help, but we don't go and use those resources until we hit the wall, right? So, it's being able to help with some of that stuff and help veterans. That's a huge bonus that I never even anticipated doing this stuff. We just, hey, let's get the guys that we have and go help some people. And then you see that side of it and you're like, man, this thing it's just it's so reward, like it's like a reward snowball for everybody involved.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the difference you can make doing something like this. So, yeah.
Well, before we close it out, I just want to again say thank you for coming and sharing your experiences, and you know, if you're looking to get involved, the links are below. They need guys, they need special operations guys, you need equipment. All those links are below, and man, it's a real honor talking to you. I'm so glad that we could make this happen on such short notice.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And yeah, you're welcome. It was truly an honor. So, do you know when you're going back over?
We don't know. We have a kind of cursory plan right now. We're trying to get funding and raise funds for some of the bigger stuff that we're looking to do in Ukraine. But yeah, I mean, I don't see how we don't go back. You know, I mean, they need help. So,
Well, I think you're gonna get a lot of support. So, best of luck to you. Keep doing great things.
thank you.